so it can only be used for Casement Park. The profile of funding is also to be agreed with the British Government. The additional £50 million FTC has been provided on a net basis, which means it does not need to be repaid to the Treasury. There are no further conditions attached to the funding. In my view, the GAA community have waited far too long for the reconstruction of Casement Park. I met the Communities Minister yesterday to discuss the next steps in delivery of this project. I made it clear that I stand ready to offer whatever support I and my officials can to help make this happen.
Mr. Frew.
Minister, for his answer to my question, can I then ask, where does he think that the other finance will come from with regards to Casement Park? And does he think that with this departure from usual finance transactional capital, not having it paid back, that this is something that could be explored further for other financial capital, transaction capitals?
Well, I'll deal with those in reverse order. I'm on record as saying that I support investment and support regardless of size or shape of the ball or who or doesn't play the sport. So I'll work with whomever to ensure that we get investment into sports and other areas in this place. But it has to be reminded that Casement Park is the outstanding part of the jigsaw in terms of the 3 stadia that were promised at that time. The other 2 are built. Casement Park has not been built, so that's the starting point. In terms of where the rest of the money comes from, that's a matter between the GAA and the Communities Minister and others. You'll be aware that the Irish Government have contributed, the Executive have made a commitment, as has the GAA. If there's to be increases in those commitments, I stand ready to play my part.
And thank you, Minister, for your answer so far. Minister, would you join with me in welcoming this investment into Casement Park?
I think it's a very welcome investment and provides another piece of the jigsaw of getting Casement Park up and going. The investment both from the British Government, the Irish Government, the Executive and from the GAA itself is now bringing this project forward. So I think it's now time to move forward with a definitive plan, and as I said to the Communities Minister yesterday, I'll play my part in that and offer whatever assistance I can in ensuring this project is delivered. And as I've been on record as many times before, I'll play my part with other sporting organisations as well.
Dr. Reagan.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, the FTC is not to be repaid as a loan, but is it to be treated as a loan, or to the Treasury, but is it to be treated as a loan within your accounting processes, and how are we going to account for it?
I am of the view that this money is from the British Government. It's up to the British Government to account for it. The Executive will be making its own contribution to Casement Park, so the announcement and, in fairness, the work done by the Secretary of State, this part of the equation was British Government investment, so how the British Government treat it is a matter for them.
Question 2.
Good financial information is critical for informing public debate and can support and guide the difficult decisions needed to manage a constrained budget and ultimately help shape a more sustainable future for all. The Executive Budget Sustainability Plan committed us to the development of a future work plan in this area. One strand of that work plan was the Budget Improvement Plan Roadmap, setting out short and longer-term action for areas of improvement and further development. As part of this work, my officials have published both draft and final Budget 25-26 fact sheets, providing stakeholders with user-friendly, high-level information and infographics outlining the budget position. NISRA has also developed a new web page which sets out breakdowns of departmental expenditure over the 26-17 to 24-25 period. I launched the new resource at the Fiscal Council Conference on the 12th of September 2025. The aim of this resource is to provide greater transparency on spending of executive departments and make information on government spending more accessible. I believe this is an important resource which makes information on government spending more accessible and will provide the public a clearer view of the cost of delivering public services here and where their money goes.
McHugh.
Minister, why was the NI executive spending webpage developed?
It's to allow the public and others, and indeed I would encourage MLAs and others to visit the website. It's very easily accessible information and gives a breakdown of how and where we're using our public expenditure. It's only right and proper that the public have as much information about where their taxes are going, and I think this web page is a great step forward in that direction. Just before I came to the Chamber, I was actually going through it myself. It is a really useful piece of information.
Ms McLaughlin's not in her place. I call Carol Killian.
Deborah Carr, question number 4, please.
The public consultation on the baby loss certificate scheme closed on the 12th of September. I am extremely grateful that over 1,100 people and organisations took the time to respond to the consultation. Every response received provided us with valuable insight and clarity to help us develop a scheme that meets the needs of those who have been impacted by the devastating loss of a baby. My officials are now working to analyse the responses. Once this is complete, I will publish the consultation report setting out what we have learned. Once the Death and Stillbirth and Baby Loss Bill completes its passage through the Assembly, I will bring forward the required secondary legislation to specify the details of the scheme as soon as possible.
Mr. Killian.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer.
First of all, thank you for that overview, and you've outlined that you will need legislation. So bearing all that in mind, when would you anticipate that this scheme would become operational? Thank you.
I would hope this scheme is operational within this financial year. I think it's important we move forward as quickly as possible and respond to the demand for this scheme and recognise that many people have come forward and responded to a consultation, which I'm sure wasn't easy for all those who have experienced baby loss in these circumstances, and I want to ensure that we react and meet their needs as quickly as possible.
Callister.
For his answer. Minister, data collection is really important to inform policy moving forward, and in particular for women's health. Knowing the volume of miscarriages that take place in our society is a way of understanding and being able to help those women. So would the Minister shed any light on whether the proposals will include data collection for the Northern Ireland Statistics and Research Agency when it comes to recording miscarriage?
We are part of the consultation was as to how we use the data collected, and the member, I'm sure, agrees with me. We understand the sensitivity of this term data and collection of information. It's personal stories and family stories we're talking about. So we've consulted on how we use it and how it would be best used in terms of supporting and developing health policy, etc. And we will carefully examine the consultation responses and then decide on the most sensitive way forward in the use of that information.
Cannon.
Question 5, please.
On the 31st of August 2025, the unpaid rates carried forward from previous years had reduced to 145.4 million, a 20% reduction from the position as at the 31st of March 2025. Of the amount remaining, 59 million is moving through legal recovery channels, with 73.6 million being examined for potential legal action within the current rating year, and 12.8 million is the subject of an active payment plan. Extensive work continues on further reductions to the amount outstanding. This includes issuing an additional reminder to ratepayers who may have genuinely overlooked payment, but they still have rates to pay. Cases of persistent non-payment or failure to engage constructively with Land and Property Services will be considered for legal recovery actions. Land and Property Services has strengthened its approach on legal enforcement processes to increase efficiency and progress in cases that have already been subject to legal processes to the next stage of recovery. It's anticipated more cases will progress through the Enforcement of Judgments Office and bankruptcy channels during 25-26.
Buchanan.
Thanks, Minister, for the answer so far. You mentioned, I think it was 145.5 million. What's that figure like going back on over a number of years? Is it increasing, decreasing, or is it staying the same effectively? You know, so what's the history on that figure broadly?
I don't have the exact figures in front of me, though I understand that we are improving year on year in these matters, and there has been a specific focus over this last number of years within the Rates Collection Agency in relation to ensuring that we collect the maximum amount of rates possible, and that we challenge those who are not paying the rates where we need to be robustly, including through the courts, and we work with those who are genuinely attempting to pay their rates and who are facing difficulties for whatever reason. But everybody has to make a fair contribution, and the Rates Collection Agency are working their way through that. I will provide the member with the actual figures in writing, but I do think there has been an improvement over this last number of years.
Paul Bradshaw.
Minister, can you please outline the 2025-26 target for rate collection? Thank you.
Well, the target's 100%, but when you talk about the scale of collection and the amounts, that won't be achievable in any organisation. I'll just see if I have the exact figure and what the actual figure, the target figure is for collection of rates. I just can't spot the exact figure in front of me today, but it is extremely high. And as I said to the previous questioner, we are, and the Rates Collection Agency is achieving significant return on the collection of rates. And it is worth pointing out that while we do and will take legal action against those who aren't paying their rates, it is not the ambition of anyone to bankrupt anyone, individuals or businesses, and it's never a nice position to be in. And we will work with individuals and businesses, but unfortunately we do have to reach that position at times, and we will do that, unfortunately.
Linda Dillon.
Minister, can you tell us how much LP has collected in 24-25?
Minister.
That figure?
In the 24-25 financial year, Land Property Services collected 1.63 billion in rates. This was the largest amount of rates ever collected in a single rating year. This money provides funding for essential public services, etc. And I commend the Rates Agency in terms of their endeavours to collect this funding, which is used in frontline public services.
Question 6, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Work is underway in the development of the Executive's multi-year budget. My officials are currently collating and considering departmental returns. This will be the Executive's first multi-year budget in over a decade. It will provide funding certainty, enabling departments to plan on a longer-term basis and create the conditions to drive real transformation in our public services. My officials are also supporting departments develop their 5-year financial sustainability plans and are currently reviewing departmental returns to the multi-year information gathering exercise. This information will inform the recommendations I bring to the Executive later in the autumn for setting the multi-year budget.
Mr. O'Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, can I ask whether the multi-year budget which you are going to bring forward, we hope later this year, will be alongside an investment strategy? The programme for government, which was published finalised earlier this year, promised an investment strategy. It's clear that we need that to sit alongside with the programme for government and the multi-year budget. When will it be published?
The member will appreciate the multi-year or the investment strategy does not necessarily fall under the remit of my department, though I accept it's an executive collective responsibility. I would hope it's published as soon as possible. My current focus is on delivering the multi-year budget.
Hargate.
Thank you. Minister, given the financial challenge, there's challenges looking at the finances going forward, and obviously we have to see what the British Chancellor is going to come up with at the end of November. What would you prioritise within this multi-annual budget?
Thank the member for a question. And we do await the Chancellor's budget, which is now scheduled for late November, and it'd probably be wise for us to await the outcome of that budget before I lay a final draft before the executive in terms of our multi-year budget. In terms of my priorities for the budget, it is about transformation, ensuring that we're delivering efficient, effective public services at the point of need, that we focus in relation to the programme for government and what matters most in terms of delivery in that, and delivers improvements to our public services for the citizens who rely on them, and ensure that those who deliver public services, public sector workers, are supported as well.
Tennyson.
Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for those answers. Minister, what are the greatest pressures that you've identified ahead of the multi-year budget, and will that multi-year budget include any real revenue raising?
There are pressures across all our departments. The growing demand for public services is significant and there for all to see, and keeping match with that demand, with a constrained comprehensive spending review over the resource 3-year period and over the budget period of over the capital budget period of 4 years is a challenge for all departments and then collectively for the executive. And it's up to each department to come forward with revenue raising proposals. I will be making proposals in relation to rates to the executive, and I would encourage other executive colleagues to be looking at their departments to see where there is fair and progressive revenue raising measures they can bring forward.
William Murphy.
Can call your question 7.
With the Speaker's permission, I intend to answer questions 7 and 13 together. I may need some extra time if possible. I have serious concerns about the approach that the British Government is taking to the local growth funding here. My officials have been advised that £46 million announced at the spending review is mostly capital funding. I had previously been assured by the Secretary of State that there would be flexibility within the local growth, and I am deeply disappointed that this is not the case. If the British Government proceeds with this approach, it will have serious implications for our voluntary and community sector. I have been pressing British Government ministers for clarity on the local growth fund for many months. This issue was raised when the Deputy First Minister and I met the Chancellor in August. I raised my concerns and frustrations with the Secretary of State when I met him earlier this month. I was due to meet the Secretary of State and Local Growth Minister, as was then Alex Norris MP, at the start of September. Due to a cabinet reshuffle, this meeting was postponed. On the 16th of September, I wrote to the new Minister for Local Growth Fund seeking an urgent meeting alongside the Secretary of State. That was on the 16th of September. Yesterday morning, I reiterated my request for an urgent meeting. My officials continue to press for urgent clarity around local growth and have urged Whitehall officials to consider contingency plans for organisations currently delivering shared prosperity fund projects here. The latest information being drip-fed does not provide me with much confidence. I have serious concerns for the sector, for people's jobs, and for all those vulnerable people in our society who rely on the services on a daily basis. The government must step up and make this right. There can be no more delay. They need to enter into meaningful engagement with the community and voluntary sector and this executive to design a scheme that meets the needs of the communities here. I will continue to push for this.
Ms. Murphy.
Colin, I'd like to thank the Minister for his substantive answer. Minister, in relation to the community and voluntary sector, obviously no doubt you have acknowledged the important part that they play in our rural communities. Can you update us with the engagement or any engagement that you've had with them?
Thank you. I had a very positive meeting with the leaders of the sector hosted by CO3 on the 17th of September, where I provided an update to 41 representatives of the sector and listened to their many concerns. I hope to meet representatives of the sector tomorrow as well, just to further engagement around this matter. The engagement between myself and the community and voluntary sector is not the problem. It's the lack of engagement from the British Government which is the problem. There's no point in having a title of Local Growth Fund when what I can see of it thus far, it is designed for the needs of constituencies in England and Wales. And I don't know the needs of the constituencies in England and Wales, but I think collectively around the executive table and in this chamber and elsewhere, we know the needs of constituencies here. So they need to start listening to us and to the community and voluntary sector here, rather than imposing a scheme upon us which has no relevance to the people's needs here.
Blair.
Speaker, and I thank the Minister for the replies given on this question. Can I ask to try and get some more specific information with regard to his conversations with the UK Government? If the Minister could outline whether there will be a transitional arrangement between the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and moving to the Local Growth Fund?
At this stage, there does not appear to be. It appears to be the view of those in Whitehall that the Social Protection Fund is coming to an end, and this is a completely new scheme, and that everybody should be aware of that, and they have made their position clear. I disagree with that completely. I think this has been handled in a shambolic fashion. It has been disrespectful to the sector, to the executive, and the executive submitted proposals and a framework to Whitehall several months ago, and on the back of that I've been seeking meetings with ministers since then, and I have had one lame excuse after another. It's now time for them to listen to locally elected representatives here and work with us to deliver a scheme that meets the needs of people here.
Frank Kingston.
As the Minister will be aware, among those projects currently receiving shared prosperity funding is community-based employability projects, which formerly had European Social Fund funding, and they face an uncertain future. Yet we hear employability support being lauded at the Labour Party conference as a key theme. Has the Minister raised the needs of those projects and the uncertainty of their future funding with Westminster, with government?
Yes, I have, and will continue to do so. And the member points out an example of a very good scheme that is working well with people who need support getting back into employment or support in employment. So this scheme is about bringing people, or this particular aspect is about bringing people back into the workplace. It's something which is quite right and proper and beneficial not only to the individual but to the economy. And I suspect that some of that support is going to be stripped away as a result of proposals designed for elsewhere. And as I said earlier, I think it would be quite wrong for me and our executive to design schemes for Birmingham, for instance. But it would appear that schemes that are designed for Birmingham are going to be imposed on us here, which is completely wrong.
Ollie Butler.
Mr. Speaker.
The scoping report was commissioned for internal use in the first instance in order to determine the issues relating to shared property management and consider various options in relation to policy development and future reform. I cannot update the members today by indicating that I have asked officials to take steps to put in place a small team with appropriate skills and expertise to carry out further work. I expect resources to be available and a team to be in place for the start of the new financial year. I further expect that considerable progress can now be made during this mandate and that legislative reform can take place early in the next mandate. Given this, I have asked officials to now make the scoping paper available on the Department's website, as this will be accessible shortly.
Mr. Butler.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his substantive answer. This is work obviously commissioned by Minister Archibald, which he held the position. Work in this space has been delayed for around 15 years. There is advice from legal counsel in regards to the need for us to do this. Can the Minister offer any succour or recourse to people that are being impacted by those property management companies in the interim, notwithstanding the fact that he has put on the record today that legislation is possible and will be brought forward in the next mandate?
Mr.
In the interim, I would advise on each of these cases. Well, some of these cases can be very complex and has their own unique issues in relation to them, and some of them involve leases, which do not fall under the remit of my department in that regard. I would advise anyone who has concerns or facing challenges in relation to their current shared property management arrangement to seek independent legal advice.
And can I ask Minister what plans there are to involve stakeholders, including homeowners, as this work gets underway?
As further work begins on this issue, officials will liaise closely with a wide range of stakeholders, building on the initial engagement which took part as part of the scoping report. Homeowners, as well as other interested parties, will be able to engage with my department, set out their concerns and raise relevant issues with them taking this work forward. This will inform an important part of the policy development process and will help shape future legislation.
Colin McGrath.
Mr. Speaker.
We all want to see health workers get their pay rise that they deserve. They should not be in the position of having to consider strike action to get pay awards that they are entitled to. I am acutely aware of the demands placed on our health and social care system and the financial pressures it faces. These financial challenges are not confined to one department, and we cannot view the health pressures in isolation. I am committed to working collectively with my executive colleagues to resolve the current issues. I have been working with the Health Minister, and my officials are actively engaging too with senior officials in health to look for ways for securing the pay uplift for health workers. The fundamental challenge remains that the British Government is failing to provide sufficient funding for public services, but health and social care workers here should not be the victims of that.
Mr. McGrath.
Speaker, I literally just felt like going blah, blah, blah with that answer, as we just blame everybody else but take the responsibility. You said about our healthcare workers deserving this money. It was promised to them. This is their pay uplift. It was due on the 1st of April and it's the 1st of October tomorrow. Now, the Health Minister says that it's not up to him, it's up to you as the Finance Minister. Do you have the money, and will our nurses get their pay rise?
The member clearly had his piece for camera worked out before I read out my answer. So it's because I didn't blame anybody. I didn't point the finger at anybody. And I listened very carefully to the Health Minister when he responded to you in previous question times, and he didn't point the finger at anybody. What ministers have to do is work together, and this is what ministers are doing on this issue. We are working together, and I have no doubt, and this may come as a disappointment to you, we will reach a successful conclusion to this issue, and health workers will get their pay rise.
Minister, I completely welcome your last commentary there and the fact that yourself and the Health Minister are working together to, as you say, successfully resolve the issue for health workers. Can I ask, as Minister for Health, how you have worked to ensure a priority for health as a budget within the Executive?
The health budget continues to take up the vast majority of, well, a significant proportion of our overall budget. It's currently sitting around 47% of our overall spend. And there is a growing demand, undoubtedly, in relation to our population's needs in relation to health care. As our population gets older, as new medicines are introduced and new treatments are introduced, we want to keep a pace with those. But I also want, as Finance Minister, this is my duty to ensure that there is an effective, efficient use of public funds. And I think the work I and the Health Minister have been doing over this last period of time, and my senior officials have been doing in relation with the Health Department, have proved beneficial as well. So I will continue that work, and as I said to the previous questionnaire, I have no doubt this will be successfully resolved and the pay rise for health workers will be delivered.
Emma Sheeran.
Ceist bhar déile do hol.
Minister.
As one of the largest employers here, the Civil Service is committed to building an inclusive workforce reflective of the society it serves and to increasing the representation of young people in our workforce. My department has introduced a range of measures to recruit more young people, including the use of social media, radio and digital advertising to target younger audiences. Expansion of apprenticeships and traineeships as an entry route to the civil service, with 14 schemes launched during 2024 and a further 13 commenced or planned in 2025. An operational delivery apprentice scheme will be launching soon, offering approximately 200 apprenticeships across the civil service departments. Launch of a Civil Service Skills Academy for trainee civil engineering assistants in summer 2024, offering full-time and part-time pathways for participants, and expansion of the Civil Service Student 51-week placement programme. I recently hosted an event welcoming the 25-26 intake of student placements to the Civil Service, with almost 100 students being placed across the 9 civil service departments. The Civil Service has also participated in the Job Start programme, offering young people aged between 16 to 24 at risk of long-term unemployment 9 months paid placement in the Civil Service, with the potential for permanent appointment on successful completion of their placement.
And move on to topical questions. Matthew O'Toole.
Mr. Speaker, Minister, a little more than 18 months until the end of this mandate, and the public is shocked by the lack of delivery on key projects, several of which have your direct ministerial fingerprints. The A5, now Casement Park, there isn't any delivery. Minister, specifically on the A5, can I ask you, you allocated earlier this year nearly £200 million in capital spending to that project. Presumably that cannot now be spent in this financial year. Will it be handed back? Will it be lost? What will happen to it?
I'm acutely aware that the A5 is currently before the appeal court, and there will be an appeal hearing on it, and I look forward to the outcome of that appeal hearing, because I do think the issues around the A5 deserve very, very careful scrutiny, and they will also require, obviously, in the court, legal determination. I'm more than satisfied that I acted in a responsible and reasonable manner, based on legal advice I received from a barrister who's now himself a High Court judge. Now, I don't know what decisions a High Court judge would come to if the information was presented to him now on different arguments, but that was the level of legal advice I received at the time. In relation to expending £200 million, you cannot criticise me on one hand for not delivering on projects, and then on the other hand investing to move a project forward. Those two things don't balance up. The money in relation to the A5 is a flagship programme for the Executive. Any monies not used this year will have to be returned to the Executive, and the Executive will decide how those monies will be redistributed.
So
you talk about careful scrutiny. I think there are some people who wish that you, as Minister, perhaps your officials, gave more careful scrutiny to the planning application that went in, and perhaps we and people who want the A5 built wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. But specifically in relation to this money that could be handed back, you are the Finance Minister, you are responsible for that reallocation and that underspend. How much is it going to be, and what is going to be done with it? Please be specific.
I reject your comment about lack of careful scrutiny. No project, in my mind or in my experience of 3 different departmental roles as a minister, has received more careful scrutiny and examination than the A5, both at ministerial level, also at official level, and I commend the officials who are involved in it. They're dedicated public servants who want to do the best for the public and the communities of which they are a part. We have a judgment on a number of pieces of detailed law, and as I said to you before, the person who was advising me in relation to that law is now himself a High Court judge. So do you include him in your criticisms? No, I am accountable, and I'm not shrugging my responsibilities as being accountable. But don't just because you want a headline or you want a moment, your 15 minutes of fame, on this, or whatever you get on this evening's news, dismiss people who are working diligently for this community. So it is. So I don't mind being challenged. If you're going to challenge me, then leave the comments to me. Leave them to me. Don't be expanding them out. In terms of the funding, as Chair of the Finance Committee, you will know that any returned funds to the Executive has to be decided on their future use by the Executive. So they will be returned in the October monitoring round, and the Executive will decide how best to reallocate those funds.
John Blair.
Mr. Speaker, and can I ask the Minister if he could provide an update on the rationalisation of the Northern Ireland Civil Service Office estate?
The civil service has been going through quite an extensive rationalisation of our estate, and rightly so. We have quite an expansive estate, and my department has been working through a plan looking at each building in terms of its future viability, its energy efficiency, etc., and its usage, and planning that estate management process. On a number of occasions, we have started to sell off buildings. That money from those sales comes back into the public purse and is reinvested in other public programmes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To thank the Minister for that answer. In relation to that, can I ask how his department intends on making any retained estate? I mean, after any review or rationalisation, there will still be a considerable estate. So, is there actually an action plan or programme to make that estate more energy efficient and more modern going forward?
Yes, and one of the reasons why we're looking at our estate buildings, some of them are outdated, and to invest in them to make them energy efficient, which just simply wouldn't be a good use of public funds. And we're moving out of some of those buildings for that and other reasons, and attempting to invest in buildings that can be sustainable with a good use of public funds.
William Irwin.
Speaker, the Minister will be aware from your previous ministerial role that our road network is a source of real concern to the motoring public. Given your present ministerial role in finance, will you commit to increasing finance to DFI for road repairs?
Minister.
The DFI Minister regularly engages with me, and rightly so, as other ministers do, lobby me in terms of their budget for investment across a wide range of areas, including repairs to the public highway and network, and I'll continue to work with her to do what I can to ensure that investment is directed in that direction.
Mr. Irwin.
In terms of compensation paid to motorists whose vehicles have been damaged as a result of defects on our road surfaces, I believe the last year something over £5 million was paid out. Do you agree with me that the rising spend in compensation would be better directed to actual road repairs?
Yes, on the simple equation of pay compensation or fix the roads, then yes. But unfortunately, the current minister and the previous minister faced significant difficulties in trying to make the budget go round. And despite, I think, there's been an increase in funding for road repairs this financial year, there's still significant challenges out there. But as I said, I'll continue to work with the DFI minister and other ministers to ensure we're getting as maximum amount of public funds out where it is needed, including to road repairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister provide any update on the progress to date on the planned strategic rating reviews for 2025-26?
Minister.
Yes, I currently have a paper with the Executive in relation to the cap and also terms of the discount for early payment, which I'm looking the Executive to endorse. I also, over the summer, my officials have been working very closely with key stakeholders in relation to business rates relief and other issues, which they're now preparing a paper for me, which I hope to bring to the Executive for the next steps in that regard as well. So work is progressing on a number of areas in relation to rates, and I think it is an important, given it are currently our only major revenue raising lever, then I think it is important we have it under review and constant examination.
Mr. Matthews.
Thank the Minister for that update. On small business rates relief and the non-domestic vacant rating, is it still your intention to go out to public consultation on those this October?
Minister.
Yes, as I say, I'm going to bring proposals to the Executive in regards to the work to date in that matter, and it would be my hope to be able to go out to consultation on those.
Minister, question 4 of oral questions. You seem to have rolled back from your previous commitment of the baby loss certificate scheme being this calendar year when you said this financial year. Why is that?
Well, it's not a deliberate attempt to roll back. I would like to see it delivered this calendar year. There's a number of factors at play in that, and a lot of it's in the hands of this Assembly as well. I note the committee has now completed its report and examination, which I want to thank the committee for, but a lot of that rests in the hands of this Assembly in terms of how quickly we can get regulations and etc. through. But it's not a deliberate intention to roll back. It is, at this stage, when I'm looking at the work programme being delivered through my department, I think I definitely have it in place by the end of the calendar year, but if I can put it in earlier, I certainly will.
Mr. Free.
I thank the Minister for his answer. Given what you have said, Minister, does this mean that regarding a further extension of the COVID regulations, that you will need then a further extension from March?
Let's not look that far ahead. We're only in September, or the end of September. I would hope, let's work our way through the legislative process and not look that far ahead just yet.
Jan Forsyth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for your answers so far. And I thank the Minister for making his officials available on a regular basis to us in Finance Committee and the information they provide. With their outturn returns up until the end of August, at almost halfway through this financial year, it's shown that the civil service departments here are overcommitted by well over £700 million. Just want to ask the Minister, what steps has he taken to ensure that we deliver a balanced budget for 25-26?
In fairness, they're not civil service departments, they're ministerial departments. And at the head of each of those departments is a minister who is responsible for managing their budget, along with their senior civil servants. And it is, we have at this stage a forecast overspend with pressures across a number of departments, but ministers are there to make decisions. I always say that civil servants advise, ministers decide, and ministers just have decisions to make.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for your answer. And at the recent briefing by your Permanent Secretary, the details provided that well over 70% of our public spending is administered through our arm's length bodies. Do you think that it's time that there is a widespread financial review of our arm's length bodies in terms of how many there are, the administrative cost of those, and whether this is a real opportunity for public sector transformation?
Minister.
That's a definite yes.
Peter Ferguson.
Can I ask the Minister to outline the impact of the 25-26 budget allocation is having on our public services? Thank you.
I'm well on record as saying that all departments are dealing with a constrained budget, and as I've just said to the previous question, ministers have difficult decisions in front of them. None of the departments are easy at this time, and the forecast over the next 3 years is also challenging. But look, we also are making a difference. One only has to look at the recent welcome reduction in the waiting lists. That is as a direct result of the executive working together and investing in tackling waiting lists and having a specific focus on them. We have invested 55 million in the early years childcare strategy, a new departure for the executive, again working together, pushing a positive agenda forward. We've invested in an additional £15 million in special educational needs, £15 million to build the skills sets in our workforce and our future workforce, £5 million to work making communities safer. So there are a range of areas, I only list a few here, where the executive working together and ministers working individually are making a positive difference.
Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Minister, for that update. Minister, can you outline where we currently are with the public sector transformation initiatives?
The member will be aware that the first round is currently out. The Transformation Board are now examining bids from departments in relation to the next round of funding, and I hope to be in a position to bring their recommendation to the Executive later in the autumn.
That brings to a conclusion questions to the Minister for Finance. I will not be in the chair for the next 2 days, the next 2 plenary sessions next week. My deputies will be filling in for me. If members would take their ease. Yeah. Set him away in Assembly business.
Members, we now return to the debate on the motion on drug testing schemes, and the next speaker is Colin McGrath. I call Colin McGrath.
Deputy Speaker, I'm glad to have the chance to speak on this motion today because it is about something that really matters, and that's keeping our young people safe. Over the summer we saw some heartbreaking incidents where young people went out to enjoy themselves at festivals and concerts, and some of them didn't come home, and families were left devastated and communities were left asking why more wasn't done. This motion is about doing more. It's about putting in place harm reduction measures like rapid drug testing at events so that if dangerous substances are circulating, we can act fast. We've seen this work well in other examples in other places, such as Electric Picnic and other festivals in the south. They've been able to test drugs on site to warn people when something lethal is going around and ultimately save lives. Now, it's not about encouraging drug use, it's about facing reality and protecting people. And here in the north, we've got that expertise. We've got the PSNI, we've got the Forensic Sciences NI and Queen's University working on a rapid testing scheme. But we're still the only part in these islands without the necessary infrastructure in place. And that's not good enough. We need the Minister of Health to step up and tell us when this will be rolled out. We need to work and see the Health Service Executive get this done. And I also want to speak directly to those young people who had bad experiences this summer. You do deserve better. You deserve to feel safe when you go out with your friends. You deserve support, not stigma. And your lives are worth protecting. Now, I know there's an amendment that takes a tougher line on drug use, and I get it. Nobody wants to see drugs at festivals. But we also know that just being tough doesn't always work. Sometimes it pushes things underground and makes them more dangerous. So we do need to be smart, we need to be compassionate, and we need to meet people where they are. And I would like to see maybe some more joined up work across this island and across these islands, because drugs don't know borders and they surface in all places, and it's about sharing the expertise and the knowledge that there is. And if that little bit of sharing of expertise and knowledge can help one young person, then it's worth sharing that knowledge. So the SDLP are happy to back this motion today, and we welcome seeing it. We don't have any real issue with the amendment, and we think that just all of us working collectively together will hopefully help to make the community safer for our young people. So let's protect the young people and let's give them the support that they need and ultimately the future that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Call Ciara Ferguson.
I would like to thank my colleagues for bringing forward today's motion on harm reduction initiatives and the need for rapid drug testing schemes at festivals and concerts. No drugs are safe in our communities, yet sadly, too many lives are lost due to drug and alcohol misuse. And further harm reduction initiatives like rapid drug testing can help prevent families losing loved ones, avoidable deaths. We're the only part of these islands without such provisions, and citizens here deserve equal protection. And as my colleague Orla has mentioned, at Electric Picnic, for example, the Health Services Safer Nightlife Harm Reduction Programme has been on site over the last 4 years, offering free and confidential back-of-house drug checking. Additionally, in many other European countries, drug checking can be made a condition of licensing for major events and festivals. And maybe this is something I'd be interested to hear from the Minister. Has he had any conversations with the Communities Minister and maybe our local councillors on that very issue? Rapid drug testing services save lives, identify emerging trends and enable alerts to be issued. We're all too aware, sadly, that the number of drug-related deaths has more than doubled over the past decade, and harm reduction initiatives are urgently needed alongside, as many colleagues have mentioned today, investment in our addiction services, having compassionate, trauma-informed rehabilitation services, and likewise tackling drug dealers within our criminal justice system with tougher sentencing. Harm reductionists, academics, policy reform activists, and those on the front line have repeatedly urged for action. We cannot allow young people to play Russian roulette with their lives when there are practical steps which could prevent accidental poisoning. Such a response is unethical and unacceptable. My party colleague in Dublin, Fintan Moorfield, outlined back in 2018 that such measures are sensible and proactive, and that by responding to the realities of life has the potential to save a life. It would be welcome to hear, likewise, for example, in the Minister's response, what consideration has been given to funding opportunities, for example, whether they could be done through the North-South Ministerial Council in this respect. Saving lives must be our top priority, and we need a humane and compassionate approach to address this issue, and this should include concrete proposals for the rollout of harm reduction initiatives to prevent avoidable and agonising drug-related deaths. Thank you.
Call Jerry Carroll.
Members opposite for bringing this motion today. It's very, very important that we discuss it and also discuss the fact that the state's current zero tolerance approach to drugs, Deputy Speaker, is not working, and the war on drugs has categorically failed. Criminal penalties for drug possession aren't working. There's no evidence that the small reductions in illegal drug use since the 90s is related to criminal penalties for drug personal possession. People who are suffering from poor mental health and addiction don't need our judgment, condemnation or criminalisation. In the areas of the highest deprivation, drug use deaths are almost 6 times higher than in areas of the lowest deprivation. I want to commend my own GP, but Dr McKenna recently speaking out in the Irish News about the links between deprivation, poverty and our bad health outcomes. Too many people are experiencing addiction, are trapped in a chaotic cycle of imprisonment and release, often into homelessness, and the risk of overdose is hugely increased, Deputy Speaker, for prisoners when they receive release. I and many others believe that criminalisation and a zero-tolerance approach to drugs is harmful, and it also deters people from coming forward for treatment if they want it. So I think there's problems, to put it mildly, with the amendment, and I'll not be supporting it for that reason. It also completely ignores the reality that people do take drugs, and many of them do so at events like festivals and concerts. Not just young people, but in many cases young people. And drug consumption is a fact of life, and I think lecturing young people in particular, will not work. A public health harm reduction approach acknowledges this fact and operates in a different format. A harm reduction approach to drugs, Deputy Speaker, in our society would be transformative, and especially for working class communities. It would also require transformative change across our health service and our broader society. If harm reduction was given proper attention and funding, which unfortunately it is not, frontline workers could proactively engage with known drug users to distribute essential items like clean needles and other essential products. Health workers and volunteers could be trained in administering naloxone to temporarily reverse the effects of opioid overdose. Medically supervised injection facilities could be established in every trust area for everyone who needs it, but this is not the case. Back-of-house drug testing should be available, not just at festivals, but at all hospitality venues where drugs are likely to be consumed. And also, I think, not fully connected, but somewhat connected to this debate, I think all venues should also be commanded to provide anti-spiking facilities as well, which aren't that expensive and should be put on the responsibility of that should be put on the venues, nightclubs, bars and so on and so forth, because we've had a spike in that, an increase in that spiking as well. Festival goers at the likes of Electric Picnic, Deputy Speaker, have access to free and confidential back-of-house drug checking. These are non-monitored safe spaces where people can submit substances for analysis without any judgment. This is really, really important. And festivals themselves see a 10 to 25% reduction in drug-related harm because people are coming forward and when they run the volunteer drug testing facilities operates on sites. And drug testing, despite sort of the propaganda against it, Deputy Speaker, saves life. save lives. The DCMS committee noted that since 2016 there have been no drug-related deaths at festivals with drug checking. This is really, really important. And plenty of other countries have moved further towards legalisation of recreational drugs. Uruguay, Canada, Germany are just some examples, and Portugal has employed the
just using other examples around, well, the rest of the island and other countries. I'm just wondering, would the member agree that the big job of work that took place in the South, the Citizens' Assembly, in terms of the use of drugs and the issues surrounding drug usage, if he's been following some of that work, and if he agrees that the outcomes that come out of the 26 counties around that harm reduction approach, if we should try and harmonise that across the island?
Thank you. I think the member haven't been following this closely as she, but obviously, if there's a Citizens' Assembly, gathering evidence and research and recommendations, I think absolutely the Health Minister and the committee should absolutely look at that. So thanks for that intervention. And obviously Portugal as well. I think the Minister kind of challenged the Portuguese model in a separate question about endometriosis that I asked him a few weeks ago, and I'm happy to give way if he wants. But I mean, it's employed a decriminalisation approach, and it's seen, Deputy Speaker, a significant fall in drug deaths and infectious transmission. I think this is really, really important stuff. It's drastically reduced. Happy to give way. Go ahead.
I think he's right to say when Portugal introduced that new regime, the number of deaths and medical incidents did drop significantly, but that was because the new policy was matched by a very heavy investment in resources within the community. That investment has dried up and the trend is now reversing, and that is my understanding.
Yeah, thanks, Minister, for that. That's useful. I mean, that obviously is an issue, but the policy obviously worked. The funding wasn't matched, and that's obviously an issue around the Portuguese government or other governments kind of not investing where is required. So it more speaks to the fact of the funding not being put where it's needed rather than the policy. But I thank the Minister for that. So I think we do, in conclusion, Deputy Speaker, need to look at the models that are working, that are reducing harm and reducing deaths. Portugal and other countries like that, and the Citizens' Assembly talk about this. And then I think anything less will mean we'll consign users of drugs to more decades of failure and misery. So thanks very much. I support the motion.
Okay, time's up.
The amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the list of speakers. I now call on the Minister of Health to respond. Minister, you have up to 15 minutes.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I thank those who brought the motion, the amendments, and everybody who has contributed. But let's just pause and think about the human cost of what we are talking about. Clearly the debate was sparked by events at summer festivals like Emerge, and now the investigations are still ongoing, so it remains unhelpful to speculate, but I think all our thoughts should be with the families and friends of those who are most affected, the loved ones of those who tragically lost their lives, no matter what the cause may turn out to be. I also want to acknowledge the pain of anyone who's lost a friend or a family member to substance use. In 2023, we had 169 drug-related deaths, and we had 341 alcohol-specific deaths in the same period. They're all preventable, those deaths. And I think we need to recognise they are driven by wider social, environmental and economic issues. And to prove that, here's the fact. Substance use-related deaths are over 5 times higher in areas of the greatest deprivation. And that takes me to my passion of health inequalities. And the fact we have to work collectively across government, not just to address the causes of health inequalities and substance use, but their underlying drivers, in other words, the causes of the causes. It's not enough to say substance use can cause very severe physical and mental issues, up to and including death. What causes people to use those substances in the first place? We have to do more to understand the causes of the causes. The Northern Ireland Statistical Research Agency examined the personal, household and area characteristics associated with drug-related deaths. That NISRA report highlights the disproportionate impact of factors such as economic inactivity, poor housing, unemployment, disability, poor mental health, and living alone on drug deaths. For example, unemployed males were more than twice as likely to die from drug-related deaths as employed males. And social housing residents accounted for 39.3% of deaths, but they only make up 12.8% of the population. Now, I want to acknowledge what we're talking about can be a very sensitive, indeed a controversial area, given the legal position of many of these drugs. So it might be helpful to provide a brief overview of how the issue sits within our substance use strategy, preventing harm, empowering recovery. Now, the strategy is agreed by the Executive. It recognises the importance of reducing the availability of and accessibility to illicit and illegal drugs. And I want to acknowledge the strong collaborative work among the PSNI, the Organised Crime Task Force Drugs Subgroup, and the Department of Justice in this area. But when we think about that phrase, preventing harm, if you move off the purest position of saying all these substances are illegal, so it is purely a criminal justice matter to be led by the Police Service of Northern Ireland, you get into an area where you are making judgment calls. If you want to prevent harm, do you provide services for people who are taking illegal substances? And I believe that that is the right approach, but it is a subjective thing ultimately. It is a judgment call, as I say. Harm reduction has become key to the department's work. We deliver on a number of harm reduction services. These include opioid substitution therapy, a needle and syringe exchange, which we're always seeking to expand and develop, take-home naloxone kits, low-threshold outreach services, and rapid drug disposal bins. The Public Health Agency also offer nitazene, fentanyl, and xylazine testing strips with all needle exchange sites right across Northern Ireland. In addition, as part of the needle and syringe exchange scheme, we worked with the UK government on a number of years ago. We did this to allow foil to be handed out to encourage people to move away from injecting to inhaling substances. This harm reduction method reduces the risk of blood-borne viruses or infections and discarded paraphernalia. From the 1st of April of last year to the 31st of March this year, 3,829 packs of foil were dispensed across needle exchanges right across Northern Ireland. And at a recent Four Nations meeting on drugs held in Scotland, Scottish officials, I believe, said in 1 year they handed out some 400,000 foil dispensers to try to encourage people to smoke rather than inject, because that was about lowering the harm. Most pertinent for today's debate is the Drug and Alcohol Monitoring and Information System, known as DAMIS. This system, again operated by the Public Health Agency, but overseen by a cross-departmental steering group, allows individuals, including service users, peers, the PSNI, Forensic Science Northern Ireland, prisons, probation, treatment and support services, and homeless service providers, to submit information to a central contact about substances of concern. These can then be considered and either noted for prevalence information, or further information can be sought, or indeed alerts can be issued to those likely to come into contact with those who use substances and may be at risk of harm. Importantly, through DAMIS, we currently have the ability to proactively seek testing of substances which are seen to be causing harm, and that comes up through our partnership working with the PSNI and Forensic Science NI. This information is used to inform related advice and alerts to service users, to vulnerable groups, and to those in key services. Now, I'm aware of the outline proposal that's been put forward by Queen's University Belfast. This is for a rapid drugs testing model, but I understand there are still resourcing, licensing and operational queries with this proposal, and that, of course, will need further thought and consideration. But it's important to note we understand that as the proposal is currently set out, it would not be a model for on-site testing at events such as festivals. Instead, it's focused more on wider prevalence testing of drugs in circulation. The proposal would not just be for my department and the PHA to consider, as there are issues for the PSNI and justice colleagues, and that's around enforcement. Conversations might also be required with local government colleagues. Operationally, any drug testing, be that on-site at festivals or off-site, would need to be subject to licensing by my department, and any proposal and resulting application will need to demonstrate compliance with any licensing requirements. Now, I want a review of DAMAS to begin shortly, and the intention is to build on the existing testing infrastructure and consider regional needs for enhanced testing possibilities as part of this work. It's also important we understand the accuracy of any testing service. We don't want to give false positives or false negatives. And in addition, any on-site testing would not address the issue of drugs taken before people enter the sites. And I understand this has been an issue at such events, and I don't think we've properly acknowledged it during the course of this debate, that on-site testing will not save the life of somebody who may have imbibed their substances before they got to the concert venue. However, yes?
Thank you, Minister. If there were on-site testing facilities, do you think it may encourage people not to imbibe substances before they went to a festival if they knew they were going into somewhere where potentially they could get it tested and then make an informed decision?
Well, I thank the member for the intervention, and if you bear with me, I'm going to come to that later on in my remarks, but it is a very important point. Any alert system, I believe, is only as useful as the advice it generates, and I know from Assembly questions there have been concerns raised about the harm reduction advice the PHA provided before and after festivals, and indeed Mr. Frew mentioned it, moving the amendment. So the PHA takes a public health approach to the prevention and reduction of harms which are associated with substance use. This enables the PHA to work with partners across Northern Ireland to promote key prevention messages sent to individuals, families and communities, so that the population is as aware as possible of the inherent dangers of substance use and can make informed choices. The messaging notes the health and legal risks of taking any illegal or illicit drug. However, the PHA also acknowledged the fact that illegal substances are available and a proportion of the population actively use them. Therefore, the PHA's social media substance use messaging, alongside harm reduction advice, plays a critical supporting role as part of the overall prevention approach, enhancing public understanding of substance use and related risks, encouraging safe behaviours, and facilitating community-led prevention efforts. We know that stigma can stop people from seeking help, so it's vital we provide evidence-based information that people can use and that can support them to engage with services. This can and does save lives. The motion also calls for greater collaboration with the HSC and the Republic. We fully recognise this is an issue that knows no borders. What's happening in Ireland, the UK, Europe, and indeed around the world has clear implications for here. I want therefore to reassure you that we work closely with our colleagues in Ireland, sharing information as appropriate, and in fact we'll be meeting with colleagues to get a better understanding of their Safer Nightlife programme, which includes testing at festivals in Ireland. I know PSNI colleagues also share information and take joint action with their counterparts through the Joint Task Force. We also work closely with colleagues across the UK. We share information, we share alerts where concerns exist. The Justice Minister and I recently met with the 4 UK ministers, as I said, and it was a very helpful meeting to share learning and best practice and to look where we can do more collectively. It's also important to be clear as to what is available in this area across the UK and Ireland. The approaches in England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland are all different, and I don't think it's fair to say we're the only one place across the UK and Ireland without a testing and alert system. As I've clearly set out, we can do this when required under DAMAS, and while festival testing is undertaken in England and in Ireland, I'm not aware of this happening in Scotland or in Wales. But we can all learn, and we'll continue to explore all available possibilities, including future cross-border and UK initiatives where these offer the potential to reduce harm. It will of course take resource, and as yet the substance use strategy is not fully funded. This is important as the wider budget position means we cannot fund any development like this, and any resources would have to come from existing services which are already supporting people in need. But I will make a commitment to ensure our precious resources are used to best effect. But it's not an issue for my department to lead on in isolation. We need to work with our partners in justice, the community and voluntary sector, local government, and with people with lived and living experience of substance use to make a real difference. The question has arisen about if there was testing on site, would that encourage people not to indulge in substance use until they got there? It would depend very much on what type of testing we put in place. Are we talking about somebody giving a sample of their substance to be tested in real time and to be given a result there and then, which is one thing and which I think may be very difficult to achieve? Or is it more about issuing a more general warning, perhaps on big screens, to concert goers that there is a certain substance in circulation and people need to be wary of it? And that is something we would really need to tease out. And again, I think the real issue for me is if you were going for the former, where you were actually potentially saying to somebody, the substance that you've had me test is okay for you to take, raises an ethical issue. I think it raises a moral issue, it raises a legal issue, but also it raises an issue of what if it is a false negative or a false positive. So I think there is a lot of consideration yet to be given to that particular issue.
Minister, thank you for that response. I now call Alan Robinson to wind on the amendment, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Mr. Deputy Speaker. Every summer, thousands of people attend festivals and concerts, and they go to enjoy music, to have fun, to make memories. Fantastic events that tend to be well run. I can think of Stenhull in my own constituency. People go for the music, for a beer, and for the crack. I encourage anyone in this chamber to attend at least once. But we know that for some, the night at a concert or a festival doesn't end safely. Indeed, drug-related deaths and medical emergencies are becoming all too common. And Paul Frew, the proposer of the amendment, laid bare very startling figures on drugged seizures and indeed deaths. And I will repeat, in a 12-month period up to June 2025, there were 6,769 drug seizures and 3,049 drug-related arrests. And I want to echo Paul Frew's comments where he says it is important to point out that there are no safe ways of taking illegal drugs. And while we recognise the role of harm reduction, this must always be complemented by the police identifying, arresting and putting those people involved in the supply of drugs before the courts. I'll not today because I am late for another event. We must not normalise drug use, especially at events where so many young people attend. It is wrong for drugs to be returned or advice given on so-called safe usage. There are no safe illegal drugs. The motion unfortunately made no reference to whether the expectation would be that those providing rapid on-site testing at festivals or concerts would have to procure a licence to operate in advance, and thus why we amended the original motion. The Home Office has governed such licences in GB, and it would be an oversight for this part of the UK to go it alone in terms of providing a less stringent and less safe approach. The HSC in the Irish Republic, who operate such testing at concerts, have described these services previously as safe spaces where people can discuss a range of issues. I suppose it begs the question, what issues can be discussed? What training do these staff have? And does the so-called confidentiality prevent onward referral to the police of information that is likely to lead to prosecutions? The TUP supports protections for young people who attend concerts, and we want to see effective means to alert concert goers of dangerous substances that are in circulation. However, we have to be careful not to compromise on the integrity of a criminal justice approach on breaking the supply and possession of illegal drugs, and therefore driving down the number of families left devastated, and in some cases, left with an empty chair. And again, thus why we wanted to amend the motion, and in doing so, strengthen it. I'm not going to rehash members' comments, Mr. Speaker. I do want to thank the proposer, Orlia. She did make reference to that harm reduction saves lives, and I'm glad that she also talked about how dangerous drugs are. Again, I say that we cannot normalise the taking of illegal drugs. And I want to thank Paul Frew, the proposer of the amendment. I think he pitched his comments at a level that we all can agree, and that is that we need to save lives. But he also focused on how illegal drug taking is wrong. No one should have drugs returned. And I repeat again, there are no safe illegal drugs. And can I just, before I conclude, Mr Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for acknowledging the pain of families. It is always important to inject that human touch in what sometimes can be very stale debates in this chamber. And he certainly did that today. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. I now call on Deirdre Hargey to conclude and wind up the debate on the motion, and you have up to 10 minutes.
Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker. And again, I want to thank my party colleagues for bringing this important motion here today, and indeed for the amendment and for all of the contributions from each of the parties here today, and indeed for the Minister for taking the time to come along for this motion. I suppose, unfortunately, I have seen it firsthand within my own constituency in South Belfast, the impact of illegal drugs and indeed other substances, both legal drugs as well, what they can have on families, on community and on society as a whole. And I'm sure there are other members, as we've heard in this chamber, can say the same thing. Sadly, too many people, especially younger people, have lost their lives recently as a result of drugs and alcohol misuse. And over the summer, I, along with other Sinn Féin reps in South Belfast, joined Ogre Sinn Féin on the Boucher Road, where there were concerts taking place. And at those events, in one night, there was over 40,000 people who were going out to enjoy a night out. The atmosphere was amazing. The sunshine was out. There was a great buzz in South Belfast. And people ultimately were going to enjoy their night. But we were there to hand out anti-spiking kits, just to raise awareness of the dangers, that drugs and how drugs can be misused, and also how that can be maliciously done as well through spiking, to really warn those concert goers just to be alert and to be safe. And I have to say that was a great initiative by a group of young people within our party. I'm sure that can be measured by other young people throughout the city and beyond. And it really highlights, I suppose, what agencies can be doing at events like concerts. Of Ogre Sinn Féin can hand out a couple of thousand anti-spiking kits at one event. I'm sure that if all of our agencies working together, or different departments from health, from justice, from communities and others, we could be doing so much more and having a huge impact. I have to say, on that night as well, the response from the concert goers was really positive. People were glad to see somebody there for making some type of intervention. And I suppose, whilst they mightn't have thought about it as they were going out, just handing them that kit made them think and maybe sparked something in their heads. So we're not saying that this is going to be the panacea for everything, but any mitigation and intervention, if it saves one life, then it's ultimately worth doing. And I suppose in Sinn Féin we're absolutely committed to tackling drug use with an evidence-based and public health-led approach. We want to ensure that we're reducing the harm, and I think that's what everybody wants to ensure, as we heard this debate today. And we recognise that criminalisation alone does not save lives. What saves lives are interventions rooted in harm reduction, in education and in practical support and help on the ground. And I know that many of the contributors had spoke of that today. And again, I just want to highlight one in my own community, in the market where I live. The Market Development Association are working with Queen's University, their Community in Place, their QCAP initiative, and indeed they have been running a community initiative looking at substance misuse, looking at health inequalities, Minister, that you touched on, and how they can break the stigma within that community, looking at the impact of addiction, of suicide, of trauma, of mental health, of inequality. And looking, though, at the importance of working class communities coming together, having a sense of pride in those communities, showing the resilience that those communities have, and importantly showing that actually community and coming together is an important driver in trying to mitigate and reduce harm as well. And again, yes, go on ahead.
Way much more courteous over time than the previous speaker, but she mentioned about the criminalisation approach doesn't work alone. I agree with her on that. Would you have concerns about the amendment that it mentions about, and I quote, no safe way of taking illegal drugs, But that approach, if it was adopted, means you'll never be able to locate, particularly toxic and dangerous drugs, and which you have, and our party have concerns about that approach. Thank you.
Well, I think what we would be pushing for is a health-led harm reduction approach. That's something that we want to see, and that's why we've brought this motion here today. And I think in listening to all of the contributions, I think we do have a broad unity of purpose. There may be some areas that we may want clarity or we may not fully agree on, but I do sense that there's a unity of purpose broadly within this chamber, and I think that's the important message that we want to get out from this chamber today. I think we do need to move beyond breaking the stigma and silence, and again I would commend to the Minister the community that I spoke about there. The market had produced a community play, a piece of theatre called The Black Dog, which was shown in the Waterfront Hall over the summer. It was packed out on the 4 nights that it was shown, and that talked about these very issues. It talked about the impact of health inequality, particularly on working class communities like the market, but that could also be the Shankill, it could be Donegal Pass, it could be the New Lodge, it could be in Derry and in other places as well. And they're going to be showing that production again. So again, I would commend that when you get the invite, that you go along to that production, because I think it was a really powerful piece of theatre, and also how the arts can be used in terms of breaking the stigma, but also building that sense of community and that sense of connection and resilience as well. Again, also when we look internationally, and I know areas like Portugal and the Netherlands was touched on, but governments there have introduced models of on-site drug testing, pill checking, drug information services, and particularly at musical events. I know many contributors touched on the electric picnic event and how they started to introduce drug testing on-site this year. And I think what that leads to is that we in the north here are the only part of these islands without such a scheme being in place. So I know the Minister said that it may not be his intent to introduce a scheme such as this here, but I would really implore that we need to make sure there's a unity of purpose across these islands. I know Colm and others touched on it earlier, that we need to see greater collaboration across the island, across these islands. We need to see more joined up working, not just within our departments here, but indeed across other jurisdictions as well. And if we're the only one lagging behind in a scheme and an initiative like this, then again I would commend the Minister to seriously look at this issue. I know that you touched on Damas and how there already is testing, but what we're hearing from those working within this field is it's too slow. It's taken days to get the results back round. Not every service user are feeding into Damas, so that's another issue as well. And that's why we're calling on the Queen's pilot and the partnership work that they're doing, because we need more rapid drug testing, and that's something indeed communities such as the market are calling on as well, because they know the quicker that we can get this out, the quicker that we can alert the public, the quicker that we can potentially save lives and reduce and mitigate against any future harms. So again, I would ask the Minister that when he's reviewing Damas, you also talked about that you're going to give careful consideration and thought. Is there a timeline into that? Is that part of the review on Damas? Because I think the practitioners and the communities out on the ground just don't want to hear our words and that unity of purpose. They actually want timelines, they want firmer commitments. And again, I would be keen, if it's not today, to know when those firmer commitments are going to be realised. I think also, obviously, the PSNI need to be part of any harm reduction framework, one that involves community outreach, collaboration, and importantly with event organisers to ensure that there is visible safeguarding and measures in place. And I know that Paul and Johnny touched on these. That, of course, has to include training for staff that are on site, to ensure that the emergency services and that the infrastructure is in place, that if something does go wrong, that there's quick and easily access to medical assistance and provision as well. And I suppose what this really reinforces and highlights again is that we need to see community-led policing, policing with the community and policing in the interests of the community also. I think also, but let's be clear, policing alone will not prevent drug-related deaths. That's not a criticism, it's just stating facts. It's clear to see that the introduction of on-site testing at all major music events and festivals, with protections in place for those who use them, And we would urge the Health Minister to introduce this as a matter of urgency. I know over the summer, and I take the point, Minister, that you made, that there's still investigations ongoing, but I know emerging out of that, and obviously the public commentary around it, that indeed the Public Health Agency said that they are open to exploring this as well. So again, we would urge you to look at the expansion of rapid drug testing, but also to look at initiatives like the anti-spiking initiative again, because it just prompts the public to think about these issues, to maybe take interventions and mitigations into their own hand, and when we're empowering our local citizens as well. This isn't obviously about condoning drug use, but it is about facing the reality. Young people, and indeed many adults within our communities, will continue to attend festivals and events. Some will experiment, some will make mistakes, but our duty is to ensure that those mistakes are not fatal and that we can prevent harm. Thank you.
And thank you for concluding the debate. Members, the question is that the amendments standing in the names of Diane Dodds and Paul Frew be made. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, if any, no. No. Aye. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question therefore is that the motion as amended be agreed. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The amended motion is carried. Members, take your ease before you move to the ministerial statement.
Peter. That's not in a condescending way, it's just a... Very good, thank you. I have received notice from the Minister of Communities that he wishes to make a statement. Before I call the Minister, I remind members that they must be concise in asking their questions. This is not an opportunity for debate, and long introductions will not be allowed. Minister, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. I wish to make a statement to the House on the launch of the Northern Ireland Community Infrastructure Fund, a major new investment supporting the refurbishment and improvement of community buildings and facilities right across Northern Ireland. In June, I provided a written statement to the Chamber setting out my intention to launch a scheme in support of the halls, hubs and centres that rarely make headlines but make an enormous difference in sustaining local life across Northern Ireland. I have moved at pace, and tomorrow the Northern Ireland Community Infrastructure Fund will open. Last Wednesday night at an event in Pomeroy, I was pleased to be joined by fellow elected representatives, voluntary and community leaders and other funders to launch the fund. It was great to see the energy in the room, the recognition of the importance of halls and community buildings and the importance of sustaining them. And importantly, the feedback from sectoral leaders endorsing this timely intervention responding to need within our communities. My vision with this fund is not just about bricks and mortar. It's about people, places and potential. In my role as Communities Minister, I've seen firsthand how vital community buildings and local halls are, be they church halls, orange halls, sports clubs or village halls, as the beating heart of our cities, towns and villages. They are the places where children learn, where people gather, where faith, sport, culture and heritage are celebrated. Across Northern Ireland, from Strabane to Strangford, from Portrush to Pomeroy, these places bring people together, not because they are grand or state-of-the-art, but because they're the thread that weaves our communities together. They are where communities gather, grow and support one another, where a teenager discovers confidence, where those who are isolated find friendship, where neighbours become volunteers. There where the fabric of our communities are knitted together. Yet many of these buildings are under strain. They are ageing, they are tired, and I've seen this firsthand in my visits across Northern Ireland. Many members have told me of the importance and the constraints of these facilities in their own constituencies too. In too many cases, they are no longer fit for purpose. Cold in winter, inaccessible for some, outdated and inefficient. Volunteers and trustees are stretching themselves to keep the lights on or make the most of spaces that are inadequate or limiting. And I think that we can all agree that is not good enough. These experiences convinced me that government needs to step in with practical support, and I've chosen to act with urgency and ambition in establishing the Northern Ireland Community Infrastructure Fund, which will disburse £4.3 million to our grassroots and local communities. This is a direct response to the challenges facing our communities and a significant and timely investment, proof of me delivering, not just discussing. The fund will provide grants of up to £40,000 for over 100 individual projects, more than 100 opportunities for local communities to improve, adapt and flourish. Now, I know this funding will not meet every need. Demand will undoubtedly outstrip what is available. This is a pilot which provides an opportunity to build understanding of need and impact and learn lessons. To help deliver this fund effectively and with impact, we have partnered with Cooperation Ireland to administer the scheme in partnership with my officials. They are a voluntary organisation with a proven track record of expertise, networks and trusted relationships. My aim is that the Northern Ireland Community Infrastructure Fund will support voluntary and community organisations to sustain their buildings by ensuring they are ready to serve for years to come. But it's also about the potential to better serve their community. The church hall that upgrades its kitchen and now runs a weekly community cafe that brings people together. Young parents, pensioners and newcomers to the area. These are not just upgrades, they are transformations. And there's another vital part of this story: local suppliers. My fund will allow community groups to work with local SMEs and micro enterprises. By using experienced local tradespeople, builders and service providers, we're supporting small businesses and maintaining jobs. This investment doesn't just improve buildings, it multiplies its impact by supporting livelihoods and building pride. This will be social value in action. The fund will be open to voluntary and community groups, including faith-based organisations, sports clubs, church halls, village halls, orange halls and other centres that provide a wide range of community activities. And I want to take a moment to highlight the role of faith-based organisations, with church halls having long served as more than places of worship. For generations they have provided an inclusive space for many, from parent and toddler groups to lunch clubs and scouting and guide groups. One of the real strengths of this fund is how it's open to a wide spectrum of community spaces across Northern Ireland, whether it's a community centre in Londonderry, a faith-based group in Portadown, a sporting club in Omagh or an orange hall in Carrickfergus. These buildings may look different, serve different purposes and be rooted in different traditions, but they can all play a vital role in community life where they are open to and used by the wider community. So this scheme will provide funding towards repairs to existing community buildings, for example refurbishment or structural repairs, small-scale refurbishment or renovation works to improve communal facilities, for example kitchens and toilets, or changes to enable multi-use of premises, capital works for accessibility improvements, upgrades such as ramps or lifts, and energy efficiency measures such as boiler replacement, window upgrades and solar panels. From tomorrow, the first stage of the application process opens. The fund will award successful applicants up to 95% of the cost of their capital project, up to a maximum of £40,000. We're asking organisations to contribute 5% of project cost, whether through fundraising, reserves or loans, not as a barrier but as a way to strengthen ownership and sustainability. This modest contribution ensures that groups are actively invested in their project. It encourages local fundraising and partnership and helps stretch public funding further. Over the next fortnight, we will be holding a range of information sessions with in-person events in Belfast, Larne, Newry, Enniskillen, Dungannon and Londonderry, as well as online events to help groups learn more about eligibility for the fund and the application process. The application process will be clear and transparent, with robust criteria to ensure fairness and value for money. Stage 1 of the process is an expression of interest, which opens tomorrow and runs to the 29th of October 2025. The Stage 2 application process will begin on the 19th of November and run until the 9th of January 2026. And I would encourage all members to engage with the guidance now on my department's website and signpost prospective applicants to the support available. Mr. Deputy Speaker, change doesn't always begin with sweeping reforms. Sometimes it begins with a new roof, a new boiler, a new kitchen. But those changes unlock so much more. With this fund, we're not just investing in buildings. We're investing in our communities, our community capital, our community infrastructure. And I look forward to seeing it deliver for communities across Northern Ireland. And I commend this statement to the House.
Hear, hear.
I call on Mark Durkin. Mark.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I thank the Minister for the statement. And I think it's vitally important that we maximise the uptake for and impact of any available funding across all of our constituencies and all of our communities. What measures will be put in place to ensure a fair distribution of this funding geographically? You won't be surprised to hear me raise, Minister, but also in terms of community background. And what checks and balances will be in place to ensure value for money as well?
Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the fund is open to all eligible voluntary and community organisations across Northern Ireland, regardless of geography, tradition or type of activity. There's no predetermined targets or preferential criteria. We have developed clear eligibility and assessment criteria, as has been set out in the guidance notes, and grant applications will be assessed on the basis of evidence of need, capacity, readiness, impact and sustainability, and yes, value for money as well.
Thank you. I call on Colin Gilgenue, Chair of the Committee. Colin.
Thank the Minister for his statement and welcome that this scheme will assist communities and also the spread of areas that are being engaged with in terms of the information session. I think that's really useful. However, Minister, this hasn't come the length of the Communities Committee, and therefore, given there has been recent concerns around the soccer funding that was announced, what can you tell us about the qualifying process and who will have the final say on who does or doesn't get funded through this fund? Will it be yourself or Cooperation Ireland? And what due diligence was done in relation to the process that Cooperation Ireland will use in distributing this money?
First of all, there was a written ministerial statement that was provided in June, and on the back of that, the committee had asked for more information. I was happy to get that briefing organised, and it will be happening shortly. I would, however, highlight the fact that all members of the committee, indeed all MLAs, were invited to the launch last week, and they'd have been able to hear more about the fund. Unfortunately, the committee chairman did not make it. In fact, none of the members on the other side of the House were able to make it to that information event, and I think that would have been useful to have heard more about the fund. But ultimately, it's not the role of the It's not the role of the committee to decide policy. It's the role of the committee to scrutinise and to assist me in the development of that. And there will be an opportunity as we assess the evaluation of that, and you will have the opportunity at committee to ask those questions. In terms of the other question that he asked, was how the assessment will be carried out, and that will be done by Corporation Ireland because of the experience that they have in these matters, but of course that will be done against the assessment criteria. So my advice to him and everyone else is, instead of quibbling with the process, let's make sure we're aware of the process and help and provide the support necessary to those who are applying, so that we can maximise our understanding of what the need actually is there, because I would like to see this rolled out further in the future, and that information will be useful to have.
To see more delivery for our grassroots, but Minister, I understand this funding will be paid retrospectively. How will the department address worries of smaller organisations who may struggle with cash flow if they have to pay up front?
So there will be flexibility in that regard, Mr Deputy Speaker, because we understand for some they will not have the capital available to be able to draw that down immediately. So we can work on a case-by-case basis with those that need additional help, and we'll be happy to provide that at a further stage of the process.
Deputy Speaker. Minister, I'm interested just to find out there that the previous member has mentioned that this will be a retrospective grant. That's not included within the statement today. But Minister, can I just ask you about the works going forward? You talked about, the future proofing, which is very welcome. But will there be any criteria provided for groups to ensure that they don't, for instance, replace an oil boiler with an oil boiler and are actually looking to meet reduction in emissions?
Well, first of all, I hope the member had listened to the answer I gave to Mrs Brownlee, where I made it clear that there will be flexibility in that regard, and more information on that will be available. What we're trying to do is make sure that we help people, make sure that we help improve in a number of areas, the physical condition of the building, the accessibility of the building, the usage of the building, and it'll also be scored on energy efficiency and reduced maintenance costs. So, of course, those things will be taken into consideration as well. But let's be aware that in many rural areas it's simply not an option to have any other form of heating system in place. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration. You mentioned specifically oil, because sometimes oil is the only option that is available.
Mr Deputy Speaker, thank the Minister for his update. The Minister will be aware, as many MLAs will be here, that there are groups who are very proficient in their application process, but very often some groups, particularly those in the rural areas, maybe don't have the capacity and the knowledge to fill out the applications in a way that would score highly enough. Has the Minister anything in place to help encourage those groups who have been on the fringes previously and perhaps avail of funds that have been close to them in the past?
Yes, there are a number of things that we're doing. First of all, we're putting in place the screening process at the start, so that those who aren't eligible don't have to spend a lot of time and energy filling out an application form if they don't meet the basic criteria to start off with. Secondly, we will have those information sessions that are available online, both during the day and in the evening time, and sessions that people can go to in person during the day and in the evening time as well, to make sure that they have all of the information that they need, and officials will be on hand to answer any additional questions that people may have. We're not trying to exclude anybody here, we're trying to help everybody, and what I'll say to all groups and organisations is answer the questions that are in front of them, give as much information as they can, give as much evidence as they can, but we're ensuring that this is as simple and straightforward a process as possible. We're not trying to exclude anybody or trip anybody up. What we're trying to do is make sure that people have the ability to articulate their need, and that the criteria of need will then be used to assess the applications.
Margaret Laskin Corla, August Buhas Lesson Ira Foster Fanya the Ratches. Thank you, Minister, for your statement. Minister, you'll be well aware of the vital role that the GAA plays in communities, particularly, again, the rural communities across the north. GAA clubs are often the hubs for other cultural activities over and above, say, just our Gaelic games, that includes things such as dance and our music and so on. But in particular, they also fulfil another role, that they are the only maybe facility in certain rural communities when it comes to things like bereavement and visitors to a community have to be accommodated for, say, for tea or the likes of that after a funeral and so on. Minister, can you confirm that GAA clubs and halls are not excluded from this fund?
So, as I've set out, any community buildings operated by sporting organisations which are available as community venues for non-sporting activities will be eligible for this, and that's set out clearly in the guidance notes as well. And it'll be up to all organisations to demonstrate the need that they have, and that they meet all of the other criteria, and why this funding is necessary, and there's no other funding in place that they can avail of.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his statement. The previous member spoke about exclusion. Can I say I'm delighted to see that this is a scheme that can offer support and the churches are not excluded for the first in many occasions. So can I ask the Minister again for his assessment of the impact this will have on our many churches and faith groups in terms of the money that they save the government in terms of the services that they offer to our local communities?
Grateful to the member for raising this issue, and it's very difficult for me to answer this question because I think it's almost unquantifiable, the community and social and economic benefit that churches and faith-based organisations bring right across Northern Ireland. They are often the unsung heroes, those that put on events and clubs and youth groups for young people to go to that shape their character and shape their futures as well. I'm grateful for the member having raised in the past with me the approach of some organisations, which is absolutely disgraceful in terms of how they're prepared to exclude and discriminate those who operate in faith-based environments. That will never happen when I am in this department, and I will ensure that those from faith-based organisations are able to not only continue their work but avail of government support and funding where that is appropriate. And I look forward to faith-based organisations being able to apply and take advantage of a scheme that will help build that community infrastructure so that it continue to impact on the lives of young and old right across Northern Ireland.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Minister, I'm really interested, I suppose, in the local economic impact that this might have, particularly interested in the reference that you've made for the benefits for local SMEs and tradespeople. How will the Department monitor whether those contracts will be delivered locally or will be awarded locally, and will there be safeguards in place to ensure that smaller tradespeople or smaller companies will actually be able to compete fairly with larger companies that we so often see going in for tenders such as these?
Yes, absolutely. Well, ultimately, it will be down to those that apply to source the quotes and to source those that will be doing this work. And I think it will be the case because of the small nature of some of the works that will be required, the grand scheme of things, that local organisations and local employers will be able to benefit from that. Of course, we do expect all projects to be costed appropriately, and that all project costs are within an appropriate cost range for the type of works that are proposed. Any works must be properly procured, and we need to make sure that contracting exercises are fair, open and transparent, because obviously public funds are at stake here, and we need to make sure that there is value for money. But this is £4.3 million that will be going in to local communities across Northern Ireland. That is going to be of benefit, but it is of course something that we will be looking at whenever it comes to the monitoring and reporting of the scheme overall, and that's something we will want to make sure that we keep an eye on, because I hope that we can bring this forward on a rolling permanent basis, and that information will be useful, I believe, to demonstrate the positivity of the scheme.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I want to thank the Minister for his statement today. Minister, I note that you mentioned in your statement about sports clubs, and I suppose at this point I should thank you for coming down to my constituency to see Bangor Junior Swifts in training. But Minister, can I ask you what types of funding sports clubs can apply for using this fund?
Absolutely, and I'm grateful to the member for inviting me down and seeing the work that goes on there. And community buildings that are operated by sporting organisations are available to apply, but they must be able to demonstrate the work that they're doing for non-sporting activities. But I would also draw the member's attention to the Olympic Legacy Fund, which I announced last week, which is also there to help sports clubs that are in need of funding. So I'm sure the member will be helping those in his constituency that need it, and they should be aware of both of those funds that I have made available to members in his and indeed all constituencies.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his statement today. It will be welcomed in many of the small rural community halls that span from Anna and South Tyrone. But Minister, you mentioned you've partnered with Cooperation Ireland. Can you detail any engagement your department has had with Cooperation Ireland in relation to the Northern Ireland Community Infrastructure Fund?
Yes, of course, and we engaged with them throughout this process, and as we appointed them because of their expertise, the established systems that they have in place, and the trusted relationships that they have with the sector more widely as well. And we think that they will be well positioned to provide that additional support that is available. And one of the reasons why this was also done was because it was the most cost-effective and efficient delivery route, and that means that we can invest more in the community sector itself.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker and Minister. I welcome your statement. Can the Minister maybe expand on the social value piece and the impact that this will have on local communities? Thank you.
Yes, and again, Mr Deputy Speaker, I think this is almost unquantifiable because we are releasing £4.3 million into local communities across Northern Ireland, but the impacts of that will go on and on, not only through the extra work that the community facilities are going to be able to provide, but also in the stability that that brings for many jobs as well, employers and employees, and the additional money then that we will be investing in our economy. So in short, it's very, very difficult to give a precise figure, but there's no doubt about it, this will continue to have a ripple effect across communities.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for his statement. He has part answered my question already, and that is that many faith halls, many halls that are faith-based and because of faith have been unwilling or unable to apply for funding that was attached to lottery sources. Can the Minister confirm that this is government funding through his department and not lottery supported, as this fund will be highly beneficial to faith-based communities and faith-based organisations?
Yes, Mr Deputy Speaker, and again I appreciate the fact that this point is raised because it does seem for some in our society today that faith-based organisations are the last acceptable form of discrimination, and many feel that that should be okay and that faith-based organisations can be discriminated against. But I can confirm for him that there is no lottery-sourced funding for this project. It comes entirely out of the capital budget of my own department.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister, obviously this scheme is going to cover rural and urban halls, and in the past the dear Minister and the previous Minister had supported 113 rural halls. I questioned the Minister yesterday in the Chamber, and he'd indicated he was having conversations with yourself regarding supporting this fund. Do you see the dear Minister putting his hand in his pocket and supporting you, which you have to step in to support rural communities? Will he support you financially to do more halls than you've talked about with this financial figure you've referred to?
Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, I certainly hope so, and I'm very grateful to the member for asking that question in the Chamber yesterday. And actually, whenever the Agriculture Minister left the Chamber yesterday, I bumped into him. I didn't do this on purpose, but I just happened to bump into him as he came out, and I hope he won't mind me saying that we had a brief conversation about this, and he committed, as he did in the Chamber, to working with me on this, because I think that it is important that proper support is provided both in rural and urban areas. I think he clearly has a direct responsibility for rural communities, and I would be more than happy if he would be able to assist me in what we are trying to do, because it will benefit rural communities across Northern Ireland. I look forward to his support, and I in particular look forward to some financial support from him as well, so that we can deliver even more.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his statement today to the House. It's a really important programme, and I'm sure my constituents in South Antrim and those great organisations will be keen to avail of it. Would the Minister consider making this a rolling programme so that community assets can be maintained well into the future?
What a good idea. Absolutely. I think we need to wait to see what we can see. We need to see the evidence of need. We need to see exactly how much is needed and where that need is, how many applications we get, etc. But I know from the conversations that I have had already, from the response in this chamber, and from the numbers that have signed up, and we've got some significant numbers of organisations that are coming along to the information sessions right across Northern Ireland, that there is a huge demand for this, because these community halls and church halls and orange halls and village halls right across Northern Ireland make a huge impact, but are in huge need as well. So this is a pilot. We are testing this. I'm doing what I can with what I have right now, but I would very much like to see this become a rolling programme. So we will take lessons from this pilot scheme, and hopefully we will be able to extend that out, and I would appreciate the member support in that.
Thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes questions on the statement. Shall we take our ease for a few moments before we move to the adjournment debate? Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, item 6 in the order paper is the adjournment. The question is the Assembly do now adjourn. And in conjunction with the Business Committee, the Speaker has given leave to Philip Brett to raise the matter of lack of development of Tribeca Belfast. I call on Philip Brett, and Philip, you have up to 15 minutes. Over to you.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, like members, I think, on all sides of this House, I got involved in politics because I love my community and I love the city that I am honoured to represent. And it would be churlish of me, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to not recognise the massive progress that has been made in our city, and in particular in North Belfast over many years. A constituency once blighted by sectarian violence has now been transformed, and while we face unique pressures as a constituency, we continue to be built back in that positive image that we all want to see. North Belfast now leads the way in the nighttime economy offering of our city as a cultural capital part of our city, and to have an offering for tourists and those who call North Belfast home. alike. In recent years, developments including the redevelopment of Crumlin Road Jail, the ongoing investment at Clifton Street, Orange Hall, the forthcoming development of Belfast Stories, the MAC, the OYES Centre, the Cathedral Quarter, I could go on. And those are a result of the dedication of businessmen and women who have taken the lead in trying to rebuild our city. The actions of government since the return of this place have also been welcome. I massively welcome the huge progress that has been made on providing year-round late-night public transport, which will be a massive regeneration for our part of North Belfast. And perhaps the Minister, when he's speaking later, may wish to say a little about his support for that initiative. The pedestrianisation of Hill Street, while a small step forward next month, shows the ambition of all sides that when we work together we can deliver upon that. But with all that progress being made, Mr Deputy Speaker, there is a glaring omission. The once bustling heart of the North Belfast inner city of North Street and surrounding streets now look like a bomb site. It is a stain upon our capital city. And Mr Deputy Speaker, I am frankly embarrassed by the current condition of what is now called the Tribeca site. In my view, Mr Deputy Speaker, this blight would not be accepted in any other part of Belfast. I don't just say this because the Leader of the Opposition is here, but if this was on Malone Road, Mr Deputy Speaker, this would have been dealt with a long time ago. And I think the clear message from those who are honoured to represent North Belfast, but this is a city-wide interest, and I do want to thank those who have come from other constituencies, that this now does need to be tackled. Progress has clearly been achieved in some aspects from Belfast City Council in terms of their decision to purchase the assembly rooms. That is a welcome step forward. However, I think we need to receive more details on that, Mr Deputy Speaker. If we are providing £2 million of ratepayers' money in the city of Belfast to Tribeca and Castlebrook, their owners, what conditions has Belfast City Council placed upon them to require them to develop the rest of that site? Because to hand over £2 million to a development company who clearly have no interest in taking the rest of the development forward is yet another waste of ratepayers' money, in my view. Other businesses in that area, Mr Deputy Speaker, deserve a medal for how they have managed to continue to operate, trade and invest in that part of the city despite the horrendous conditions in which they operate. Just at the weekend, I was walking up Lower Garfield Street and the Deer's Head, who have spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on ensuring that they have a great offering to locals and to tourists. When people walk out of the doors, they are hit in the face with scaffolding, with falling bricks, and with an absolutely disgraceful sight. And those businesses are paying tens of thousands of pounds of rates on a yearly basis. They are employing our constituents, and the conditions in which they operate in would not be accepted in any other part of our city. Mr Deputy Speaker, they say that success has many mothers and fathers, but maybe on this one failure does as well. And I do want to pay tribute to the work of all political parties on this issue. This is not an issue of my making, of my party's making, but there is a genuine interest on all sides of this House in trying to move this forward. In Belfast City Council, I do want to pay tribute to our group leader, Sarah Bunting, who has organised a number of meetings with me with Castlebrook so I can make clear our need for development on that. Seamus Tafoitia, Brian Smith, Sinn Féin have all been involved in trying to get this moved forward. Michael Long from the Alliance Party, so I do want to give credit to all political parties on that, and I actually think we'll hear from colleagues later today that having a cross-party message on this is the strength of the case to try and have this moved forward and delivered. I also want to pay tribute to some of the business organisations, the Belfast One Bid and Martina Connolly, who continues to champion the need for this redevelopment, the Cathedral Quarter Trust, the Save Cathedral Quarter and the Cathedral Quarter Bid led by Damien, who continue on a daily basis to raise this vital issue. So as I said, progress has been made in the redevelopment of this part of North Belfast, but we now need to see strong leadership from central government and from the council is my view, Mr Deputy Speaker. A clear message needs to be sent to Castlebrook that you either use your development rights, you use your planning permission, or you lose it. No other part of the city, as I continue to say, would allow this to drag on and on. And I perfectly understand that market conditions from their initial planning permissions have changed, but there is only so long that people can be expected to wait for this development to take place. We were told it would be retail-led, then that changed to office space, and now this seems to be the newest incarnation, may be a housing-led development. All of these are important and welcome, but they now need to get on and deliver on that. People, frankly, Mr Deputy Speaker, are fed up, and it's not my job to make excuses for Castlebrook. My job is to stand up for the people who elected me, and they want to see action taken on this site. So I think we send a strong message from this chamber today that Castlebrook are put on notice, that they need to get on and develop this and stop expecting the people of North Belfast and our wider city to accept second best.
Thank you very much indeed, Philip. All our speakers will now have approximately 5 minutes. I will not accept any interventions because that will cut down on the time we have. Carol McEwen, over to you, Carol.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and I want to thank Philip for bringing this adjournment debate today. I'm from that area, and you know, I would still occasionally call over and go for a walk with my friends with their dogs all around there. I don't stray into the Deer's Head, but I have seen some of yous at the Duke of York when we've been walking up with the dogs. Great establishments, by the way. But Philip's 100% right. All you're met with is dereliction, scaffolding, no attention, no care, and it sends a message out that the residents, developers potentially, and indeed one of the most iconic parts of the city in terms of even the architecture, it's just getting lost. I remember, and this isn't a dig, Matthew, at yourselves, but I remember the announcement in 2004 around the Royal Exchange, 2003 actually. Really ambitious, great, and Philip's right. It was then, you know, retail, and then it became office space, and I think hopefully it'll end up a mixture of all. And then the awful fire happened in North Street Arcade in 2004. And there's just been a series of, I would just say it's mission creep. I mean, Royal Avenue used to be bustling, right from Donegal Street, Lower Donegal Street, right through to Donegal Place, and now it's not. I mean, as someone who has been there in the evening and dark nights, it's a scary place. And even the businesses will say that. I completely agree with everything you say about Castlebrook. Deirdre and I and others, along with our team, and Philip's right about the cross-party team in Belfast City Council, who in my opinion and in my experience, have led the charge in this. I mean, with our party adamant about the assembly rooms and then the cross-party support to try and get the whole thing done. I think it's a stain on us all, to be frank. I do think Castlebrook need to be put in notice. If it was any other part of BT9, not getting stuck into South Belfast, but all I'm saying is elsewhere it wouldn't be allowed to happen, and it shouldn't be allowed to happen anywhere regardless of postcode. I would like to see the department using its regeneration powers almost to act as the leadership in this. I mean, Belfast ratepayers, and I know the businesses pay a lot of money in rates, but Belfast ratepayers have coughed up more than anyone else. The developers, in my opinion, have led us all a merry dance. We've all been clear about what we don't want. We've all been clear about what we want. And every time you think you get somewhere to come back. And I just feel the whole process, I would go as far as say, in my personal experience, it's been very disingenuous. So I can only imagine the frustration of potential developers. We've had meetings with housing providers, housing associations, developers around looking at using the 80-20 social private. Everybody has stretched themselves and then some, and it's still sitting there. And I think the engagement all depends at maybe correspondence from the Belfast City Council Planning Committee, and then it almost reminds them that they need to engage. Engagement and communication should be a constant. We know that in this place. even if it's good, we'll have good days or bad days, most people know exactly where they stand. We thought we knew where we stood with Castlebrook, and all round, I hate even the name Tribeca, right? I think it's just rubbish, but that whole development does need lifted. And I think we would all welcome the opportunity. The only people that I think would have the ability, the authority, and indeed the credibility to do this would be the department, and bringing other agencies to do a round table to bring them together. Because with the regeneration powers, with the kudos of acting on behalf of the Assembly and the Executive, but certainly even just to lever other departments, I'm glad Hill Street's pedestrianised. It took too long. And if developers are watching how we do things, then they're not going to do anything with haste. So we all need to be honest about that. So I do think it is an opportunity for us all to come together and put Castlebrook and others on notice, along with our community, our business and our statutory partners. So I'm up for that. And again, thank you, Phil, for bringing the debate today.
Thank you, Carol. I call on Nuala McAllister. Nuala.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Phil, for bringing forward this debate today. I don't think there's anything that we will say that we disagree on at all, and I think it's really important to note the cross-party working, particularly at Belfast City Council level. I know since I moved on from the Assembly, or to the Assembly, that our party group leader there, despite being an East Belfast elected rep, was very much invested, in particular in the Assembly rooms angle. So I think it's really important that this is cross-party working, and that we do move forward here. And much of what you said, Phil, at the start of your speech, I had about the MAC, the Crumlin Road Jailhouse, Dunkern Arts Centre, Ulster University. I mean, North Belfast is thriving, and there is redevelopment going on. And it's absolutely depressing then when you go into the city centre beyond the Cathedral Quarter into North Street and the Tribeca. I get a wee bit scundered too whenever I call it that and refer it to that name. But like, that's what everyone knows it as. It was supposed to be what, 500 million investment into the area, and so far what has it achieved? Tumbleweeds, dilapidation and disrepair. And it's an absolute disgrace that it has been allowed to remain like that for so long. One of the things that I think is really important to note is every time any of us has a meeting or any correspondence with Castlebrook, is I do question where they're moving forward in the future and what it is going to look like, and we have to just be honest about that, because I don't think we really have a full picture. I know that there's planning proposals that are on the table at the minute, and there are a lot of changes, but forgive me if I'm going to remain sceptical as to what it will look like, and that's something that we need to learn from when it comes to those lessons. Is we cannot allow developers to come in, buy up land, not do anything with it, perhaps get the planning permission and sell it on for the cycle to just rinse and repeat constantly. But whenever you look at the area and the actual history too, it's steeped in history. We have one of the most oldest churches in Belfast in that area. It has a very small congregation, but it has a lot of history. United Irishmen, the Harpists Assembly, there's a lot there to be actually proud of, that we can sell not only to Belfast but to the wider Northern Ireland and tourism as well. And if it's not for a small handful of local businesses that remained and said, no, I'm not shutting up shop and moving on, and that I'm staying here, that it would be in a much worse state. We had a massive opportunity when the university was relocating for Castlebrook to play ball and get on board with the community and actually change it for the better. We missed that opportunity, but it's something that we should get back on track with too. And hopefully the Minister also, when he's winding up here today, can perhaps think about working with Andrew Muir and the DAERA Minister with regards to the dereliction bill, because we should use whatever powers that we will have, divorce developers in particular and property owners, to look after the sites so that they don't fall into more disrepair. I welcome the Council's move to take over the Assembly rooms. I welcome the pedestrianisation of Hill Street, but like Carol said, it just took too long and we can't wait anymore. But what can it look like? What can we see that part of North Belfast? It can be lively, it can be bustling. It should be a mix of private, public, retail, business, It should have more pubs, restaurants, a hub to bring people together, and that's what we should really be working towards as a cross-party, led both by this government and by Belfast City Council. My party is prepared to work with every party in this chamber, to work with everyone at Belfast City Council and any minister that is involved to actually get what we need, and that is thriving redevelopment of the Tribeca area in North Belfast. So thanks again to the member for bringing it here today. I'm very grateful to respond and look forward to hearing what the minister has to say.
I call on Jerry Kelly. Jerry.
Consensus is broken out here, so I'll try and keep this short. There's a couple of points I really want to make, but some of them already been made. But bear with me, and of course I thank Philip Brett for bringing this forward to the Assembly. It's very opportune. People know it was back in 2020 that planning permission was granted for what was sold as a £500 million regeneration scheme of the Cathedral Quarter, which is 12 acres of city centre. The city centre were meant to be brought back to life with homes, offices and shops. Yet 5 years on, nothing has happened, as is said by a number of the other speakers. In fact, planning applications have only been withdrawn. Not a single real step forward has been taken, and the promises that have not been kept, and the site lies idle. Castlebrook Investments, I agree with all that has been said about them in the past, and unfortunately this probably goes for a lot of these huge investment companies. I think Nuala mentioned, if you didn't use that word, land banking, and that's what it appears to be, not only here, but this is a huge example of it. And then they will flip it when whatever the money comes up, and then somebody else will hold it for a long time waiting for the right opportunity to make the most money. So I think we have to look at that and see what we can do about it. But who pays the price of, I read some of their stuff and it said that they were frustrated. They're not as frustrated as the people of Belfast. And who pays the price for this delay? And it's not the developers. In London, it's the Belfast people. And also, as mentioned before, the small businesses that are pushed out, because some of them have been pushed out. Others brave enough to stay there, and fair play to them for doing that. And it is a site of absolute dereliction. The Assembly Rooms, which has been mentioned again, is one of the most historic buildings in the city and has been left abandoned with developers while the developers chase profit. That building is where Henry Joy McCracken was sentenced in 1798, and it should be restored and respected as an important part of our history, whatever our view of the history is, not left to fall into disrepair. Belfast City Council, as I understand it, is at the contract stage of purchasing the building and bringing it back into the ownership of the people of Belfast, which is what we should see all of this being done, where possible at least. And we expect completion soon. And that's the type of leadership I think we need. Community groups have also stepped forward where developers have failed. The Save the Cathedral Quarter have sent thousands of letters objecting to the wrong type of development. They are advocating for social homes to be included in development, for safe play areas, and for the developers to engage with the artists and cultural sector, which is also very important to our city and an essential part of our city. And they're rightly calling on the developers to develop and not to demolish a lot of our heritage. The Department for Communities, the Minister, I think has the power to invest and the regeneration powers. I was speaking about it earlier today, and they fall under that department. I do agree that it is a matter not just of the Assembly and of the Minister, but also obviously of the Council, and I do think the Council have showed leadership in all of that. And if the developer cannot develop what they promised, then I would argue that these powers should be used. The field Tribeca, and I hate the name as well, just for the record, development is a lesson about what happens when development is handed over to private businesses without accountability. And the people of this city deserve better, and we deserve a city centre that belongs to us. And I think it will have a snowballing effect. I mean, it's a huge site, 12 acres, and it will start spreading out. It'll start attracting all sorts of things, including tourism and nightlife and all the rest of it. So I think everybody's united in arguing for this. And that's it.
Thank you, Jerry. I call on Brian Kingston. Brian.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, and as others, I thank my colleague Philip Brett for bringing this motion to the Assembly floor. And I note the high level of agreement that there are from all parties on the frustration at the lack of progress on the ground with this development. Certainly North Belfast does have the highest level of dereliction in the city centre area. And as others have done, I do want to acknowledge that we have had investment and progress, particularly with the new Ulster University campus. And it's a pleasure seeing young people on the ground in that area, and the new student accommodation there, and the new Belfast Stories visitor attraction, which the Council will be bringing forward. And as others have done, I want to acknowledge the progress at Hill Street, the MAC, the St Anne's Square, and the work of the Cathedral Quarter Trust and BID, and moving a bit towards the river, also the impressive City Quays development by Belfast Harbour. But the derelict sites are very much in evidence when you move into the city centre from the Shankill direction, from Clifton Street, Donegal Street, and from York Street, York Road direction. And the non-development of the Tribeca site has been a huge cause of blight and frustration. It didn't progress when it was known as Royal Exchange, and when Castlebrook bought it, we were expecting rapid progress. I understand the name Tribeca's come from New York, where it's triangle below Canal Street. So I don't know in Belfast, I think I heard once it was the triangle beside the cathedral, or an abbreviation of that, or below the cathedral. But they have expanded the site by buying up more land and property on the other side of North Street, between Rosemary Street and Lower Garfield Street. So they now have created a 12-acre site, a significant chunk of the city centre. That would be good news if it was progressing, but instead we've seen these frustrating years of delay and a lack of physical progress. Castlebrook point to wider circumstances which have impacted on their plans. Originally meant to be retail-led, possibly with a John Lewis store was touted, but the growth of online shopping, out-of-town shopping, seems to have damaged that prospect. Likewise, when they thought more office-led development, but COVID and the growth of home working impacting on those plans. So we're told it's now meant to be residential-led, also including some student accommodation, possibly still a hotel, but we hope there will still be retail uses and public spaces, especially at the ground floor. We do welcome the move by Belfast City Council to purchase the historic Assembly buildings and some other buildings in the car park behind it, and trust that that will come to fruition and will kick-start the redevelopment of the wider site. Castlebrook tell us that a new planning application is being prepared, and they plan to carry out briefings around the end of next month. So as North Belfast DUP representatives, Philip Brett, and myself and our councillors will continue to push for progress and for early actual progress, not for land banking, which is what it seems to be currently. So there have been changes in the economic landscape, but this is prime real estate connecting the city centre to the North Belfast and Greater Shankill area. So the university campus and Belfast Stories attraction are leading the way for a brighter future for this city centre quarter. Let us see Castlebrook and Tribeca adding to that regeneration, not holding it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank Mr Brett for bringing this adjournment motion today, and I've certainly learned a lot about the area and the problems with Tribeca in North Belfast, and I hope the members don't mind my contribution in the debate coming from Fermanagh South Tyrone. But Belfast and dereliction, lack of development, affects every part of Northern Ireland, and Tribeca unfortunately has become the symbol of delay and possibly missed opportunities, but hearing the members speak today, it's encouraging that resolve is here, and with the work and the consensus of Belfast City Council, that is positive too. So I'm hearing very good notes on that. Dereliction in Belfast City Centre and the lack of development, particularly around the Tribeca site, demands urgent attention. what should have been a symbol of regeneration, as others have pointed out, has remained and become a site of neglect, impacting the city's appearance and its effect on the economy, retail, tourism sector, community pride in particular, and members have spoken very movingly about the impact on the communities living there. Derelict properties and vacant land result in lost revenue from unpaid rates, funds that could support essential local services, and this impacts on footfall, harming businesses and undermining Belfast's potential as a vibrant hub of activity for the entirety of Northern Ireland. A proactive approach to tackling these issues is essential, and it is encouraging to see, as I said, that consensus. And progress is needed in Tribeca. I've seen the plans. It's a promising development that can unlock further massive opportunity for Belfast. On the wider issue of dereliction, we should continue to press for greater mechanisms to tackle it, such as introducing a vacant land tax which may incentivise property owners to develop or release unused sites, unlocking opportunities for investment and growth. However, such proposal must be examined in detail to avoid any adverse impacts or unintended consequences that can cause a chill factor. We are seeing, of course, progress in the long overdue dilapidation bill, which I'm keen to see rolled out, and there's an expectation that this will become a catalyst to develop growth within our communities. I do have to commend Belfast City Council for the Vacant to Vibrant programme. From what I hear, this has been broadly welcomed right across the city and perhaps could be a model for elsewhere in Northern Ireland. In closing, we must see progress on Tribeca. For too long, this site has seen little or no progress, but with determination and vision, it can become a reality. I know that my friend Mr. Brett wants this over the line, and if he puts as much passion into this as he has done into getting Hill Street pedestrianised, then I know we will see progress. Thank you.
I call on Matthew O'Toole. Matthew.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm pleased to be able to speak on this subject today. It's a subject that Mr. Brett and I have talked about a lot. We share some of the same priorities in terms of the city centre, and I'm very glad he's brought this debate today, whether it's the pedestrianisation of Hill Street, the introduction of night buses, all of those things that we need to maximise the amazing potential of our city centre as a cultural, historic, economic driver, not just of this city, but of this region and the entire northern part of this island. I think the further development of what is shamefully and irritatingly known as Tribeca, and I agree with basically everyone that that is an ahistoric, vulgar and preposterous title to give such a brilliant and historic part of Belfast. But given I am the Leader of the Opposition as well as being a Belfast representative, and I do want to talk about the Belfast context, I'm going to inject a little bit of dissent, and that's important because if you want to talk about dissent, that great radical Presbyterian quality that we associate with the assembly rooms in that part of Belfast, I'm going to inject a wee bit of dissent into the consensus, because while we agree that something must be done, someone watching this debate from outside might think this was a little bit like Mark Twain talking about the weather. Everyone says something must be done about the weather, but no one does anything about it. Nearly a year ago, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the opposition on an opposition day brought a motion to the Assembly to talk about Tribeca and the preposterous failure to deliver on ending the dereliction there. In that motion, we talked about asking the Minister of Finance to look at city centre dereliction, including a vacant land tax, which Ms Armstrong just referenced. We talked about the historic significance of the assembly rooms and doing something about that. I'm glad to say there is some progress, and the Council is moving towards acquiring that site. We called on the Minister of Finance to do a full rates review of what was happening across that site, because in questions, in written answers to me, it was revealed that there was widespread and it seems apparently inappropriate reliefs being given to properties that were falling into dereliction on that site. That was discovered because I asked questions about it. And I also called on the Minister for Communities and the Minister of the Economy to work with the Finance Minister and Belfast City Council to further proposals for this site. Now, I want to see all that happen, but it's important to say this Assembly passed a motion to do all those things last November. The public out there don't just want us to show up and talk about these things again and again. They want something to happen. So I'm glad we have consensus today, and whether it's an adjournment debate today or an opposition day last year, let's see some progress. I hope to hear from the Minister. I welcome the fact the Minister is here talking about it, because I asked him a written question, 2 written questions in fact, in May and June last year in 2024 about what meetings he was having on Tribeca and potential regeneration work. He said he hadn't had meetings, but he planned to have meetings with the Chief Executive of Belfast City Council. I'd like to hear an update on what happened in those meetings and what meetings have happened further, because this site is not just full of potential. We've wasted 2 decades of potential. We all have some hand in that as politicians and political parties, but we all now have responsibility, some of us more than others because we don't hold ministerial office, to deliver on that. It will require a joined-up effort. One option that we put forward as the opposition last year was that the executive, working with Belfast City Council, create something like the Laganside Corporation. Now, there are some objections to the way Laganside worked, and I'm not saying it was perfect, but it was a company that vested land and delivered a regeneration project. That's perfectly within the legal powers of the executive to do that. Why not? We could use FTC. FTC is already being used, I hope, to deliver Casement Park. I think the Minister wants to use it to deliver other football stadia. I have no problem with that. Why not use it for this purpose? I think that would be something that we could explore. And if not that, then what? Because we can't go on like this. We can't have any more debates here, whether it's opposition debates, adjournment debates, or questions where we talk about something being done and then nothing happened. I see people are looking around the room thinking, this guy's being annoying again, he's standing up and making a nuisance of himself. I don't care, because that's my job. Too long in this place, we've stood up and all agreed with one another, and then guess what? Nothing's happened. On the point about whether this is North or South Belfast, here's the point. It's Belfast. Most people who walk down Hill Street and have a pint of Beamish or Murphy's in the brilliant Duke of York and then walk around to Donegal Street and North Street and they say, why is this like this? We're in the middle of one of the most happening cities in Ireland, one of the most interesting cities in Europe. Why is there this block of derelict land? To be honest, guys, we're all worried about where constituency boundaries lie. People aren't aware whether it's North, South, West or East Belfast. They just know it's Belfast and it's brilliant and it's full of potential. We, as public representatives, need to get behind it and deliver it, not let it fall into any more dereliction. I commend the Cathedral Quarter bid, Save CQ, who've been amazing at campaigning on this, individual reps from a whole load of parties who've worked very hard on this, but let's do right by them, let's deliver it, let's be specific, let's have no more debates where we all agree with one another, let's actually do this and make this project and this part of the city thrive again. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. And just before I call Deirdre Hargreaves, I find it very upsetting that nobody's mentioned my favourite pub, the John Hewitt. Deirdre, over to you.
And I probably won't mention it either. No, I welcome the debate and thanks for Philip for bringing it along. And I actually had it in my note that we did debate this last year because I was here talking about it. And I suppose when we are looking at the city centre, I mean, I look at it as one city centre which impacts on all the communities, because whilst this is probably the largest site in the city, to be fair, that's lying in dereliction, there are other parts of the city centre that bound on other communities. In South Belfast even as well, you've Ormeau Avenue, you've Crummock Street and areas like that, where you do have large swathes of land, just like this Tribeca scheme, that are lying derelict for decades now, and we do need to look at that. Obviously, we've had an impact of conflict, and that's been obviously one of the issues in terms of we don't traditionally have people living in our city centres and the city core the way other cities would have. We also have a legacy of defensive planning that actually segregated and severed communities off from the city, but also off from each other as well. And I always see this when you look at maps of Belfast. Before the 1960s, Belfast worked like a grid system. And then when you're looking into the 60s and into the 70s, it started to become segregated and severed off from the city centre, but also communities off from each other. I live in the market and we're segregated from Donegal Pass, who is segregated from Sandy Row, and that continues around the city centre. And I suppose what's unique about Belfast is it is surrounded by inner city working class communities that have been there for generations and that in of themselves have stayed there through even the worst days. And have actually contributed to building the city that we have and building the unique aspects of it. And we need to make sure that whatever development happens on this site and on other derelict sites, that we're doing that alongside those communities where they're at the heart of the engagement, the consultation, but also where we're building greater community ownership and public ownership of land on of assets as well. I know Matthew touched on Laganside. And when you look at Laganside more broadly, of course there were really good things that were done in terms of the regeneration of the river, new footways and all of that. But what they didn't do was engage communities. They actually cut communities off And in one of the Laganside reports, they drew a red line around all the communities. So all of this multi-million-pound investment that happened did not touch those working class communities that actually needed it the most, and they drew a red line round. We're doing one regeneration project in South Belfast, the tunnels, opening old traditional tunnels, and actually in a Laganside report, they had said in the 90s they bricked the tunnels up to stop the people from the market community coming over and breaking into their cars. So we have to make sure that whatever way forward is, the communities are at the heart, and that there's not that class severance or segregation, because that's what we also seen with Tribeca. And when you think of Tribeca in New York, it was gentrified. It pushed low-income and working-class families out of Tribeca, and we need to make sure that whatever scheme takes place here actually integrates those communities in, because that's what the developer tried to do. They tried to put the social housing in Academy Street away from the overall development and tried to just have higher end housing options. And we need to make sure that we're not segregating on the basis of social class or any other type of segregation. We need to make sure that we're building inclusive places for all of our communities. I think developer-led regeneration in on its own is not working. It's failed, and it's clearly failed here. And we need a people-centred and focused approach to regeneration. I don't think it's just down to the Communities Minister to do that. It does need the Economy Minister, the Finance Minister, the Infrastructure Minister, the DAERA Ministers and others as well. And I would much prefer a ministerial-led approach to actually taking this forward, and whether that's, a few ministers taking the lead. But I would like to see a ministerial group of some form being established. And we previously done this around the Holy Lands intervention that was done in the city a number of years ago, and I think something else can be done around here as well. I think that we need to include the communities, we need to include the arts groups, the cultural groups, the universities, and obviously the businesses that are there as well, because we need to make sure that the benefits is for the local economy and for local people and local communities. And I think there's a huge opportunity to do that. I would ask the Minister, I know we have business improvement districts as well, but I think that there's a democratic deficit in those, and I would ask the Minister to look at that. No communities are involved in that, yet there's huge swathes of public money going into those bids. But communities that live in and around and part of those bids are not part of the decision-making processes. So again, I would just ask the Minister to work in partnership with others in taking this scheme forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre. And I call on the Minister. Minister, you have up to 10 minutes. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. And can I thank the member, Mr Brett, for bringing forward this issue and for his passion for his constituency and for the city centre and for clearly outlining what needs to be done. He also mentioned the extension of late-night public transport services as well, and I'm happy to confirm to him and the House that I have committed funding for that. I know that other parties are being asked for that as well, but he can be assured of my support and that of my party in ensuring that that funding is made available so we can continue to ensure that the city centre can be supported, and I look forward to making a further announcement with more detail on that in the time ahead. But this site, I'm scared to call it the Tribeca site because of the disapproval that I'm getting from across the chamber. But it's situated in the heart of our capital, and it represents a significant opportunity for economic, cultural and social regeneration. However, as the members around the chamber this evening and the wider community rightly observe, progress has been disappointingly slow. And as Minister for Communities with responsibility for regeneration and heritage, I must express my concern at the lack of meaningful advancement by the developer. The continued stagnation of this site is not just a missed opportunity, it's actively contributing to the deterioration of a key part of the city. This blight is undermining the physical and socio-economic recovery of the city centre and, by extension, the wider city. The Tribeca scheme, led by Castlebrook Investments, was originally heralded as a transformative £500 million regeneration project spanning approximately 12 acres. Planning permission was granted in 2020 for a vibrant mixed-use development incorporating residential, office, retail, leisure and cultural spaces. alongside the conservation and regeneration of listed buildings. However, despite early momentum and public anticipation, we have yet to see any meaningful construction activity on the ground. In recent months, Castlebrook has withdrawn several planning applications for the wider site, citing concerns around commercial viability. This development, or lack thereof, has understandably led to growing frustration among key stakeholders, including Belfast City Council, local businesses and residents. The site remains largely derelict, and its current condition contributes to a growing sense of stagnation in the city centre. Belfast City Council has publicly voiced its concerns and is actively exploring a range of options, including vesting or acquisition by agreement, either in whole or in part. The assembly rooms and adjoining properties, for example, have been a focus for such intervention. So I have instructed officials within my department to engage constructively with the Council to help identify and deliver a viable plan for the regeneration of the Tribeca area. However, let me be clear, this is a complex issue and it will require time, resources and input from a wide range of professional disciplines and stakeholders to develop a fully costed and deliverable alternative. Now, Belfast City Council is currently preparing a paper for submission to my department, seeking support for what is envisaged to be a regeneration and planning framework for the Tribeca site. This framework will aim to provide the basis for statutory intervention, whether through purchase or vesting of lands in part or in full, and it will set out clear steps for the delivery of a viable regeneration scheme. Crucially, this framework must also address the financial realities of any proposed intervention. It must present viable delivery routes, whether led by the public sector, the private sector, or a combination of both. But let me be absolutely clear. The status quo is not acceptable. I fully share the concerns expressed by members and the public, and the current impasse cannot be allowed to persist. And we're committed to working in partnership with all stakeholders to unlock the potential of this strategically important site. And we are open to exploring innovative and practical solutions. One such avenue is the potential use of financial transactions capital to support partial public ownership or partnership models. The precedent set by the Laganside Corporation offers a valuable reference point for how targeted public intervention can act as a catalyst for urban renewal and bringing together public ambition and private enterprise to deliver real change. So in the coming weeks, my department will continue its dialogue with Belfast City Council on the proposed regeneration and planning framework, and we will also continue our engagement with Castlebrook Investments to seek clarity on their intentions and timelines for the site. But importantly, as we move forward, we will work to ensure that any future development reflects the unique character and heritage of the Cathedral Quarter and surrounding areas. It's essential that regeneration delivers not only physical transformation, but also real and lasting benefits for the city and its communities.
I really appreciate you giving way. Can we make sure that it isn't developer-led, that the departments and communities, the residents, are at the heart of this, because we have had development companies for a long time and we've got nothing back, and the communities have been shut out again. Thank you.
Address that just in my closing remarks, but I want to say this. North Belfast deserves better. The Tribeca site must not remain a symbol of missed opportunity and stalled ambition, and my department is firmly committed to playing its part in delivering a vibrant, inclusive and sustainable city centre, one that reflects the pride, potential and resilience of this city. Now, I have heard the comments that have been raised tonight, and the passion that many people have expressed as well. So to that end, I can confirm that some meetings have taken place over the last number of days, and it is now my intention to bring all interested parties together to make sure that we can sit down in a room together and find a way forward. I want that to include political representatives, Belfast City Council, other ministers, and the developers themselves. I think it's important that we do all get together so that this can be thrashed out. I don't pretend that this is exclusively my responsibility, but I am prepared to step up and to make sure that this meeting happens. I've done it in the past. I did it with the defective premises when no one else was willing to take that on. I am willing to stand up. I'm willing to make sure we get everybody in the room so that we can find a way forward, and I will do that as quickly as I can, because I know that people have been waiting far too long, and at the very least we need to be able to get together and plot a way forward, and that is my commitment to the House this evening. Thank you.
Very much indeed, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, that completes the adjournment debate. The Assembly is now adjourned. The Assembly is now adjourned. Thank you.
Assembly Chamber. Sound. Assembly Chamber. Sound. Assembly Chamber. Sound.